Late night, a quiet garage. A veteran single dad janitor stops a masked attacker and pulls a powerful woman to safety. He thinks it ends there. It doesn't. Grateful, the billionaire woman CEO opens her world to the man who saved her. He opens his heart for the first time since loss. But Power hates stories like this. Her board orders her to cut him off. His late wife's parents move to take his child. Cameras swarm. Whispers rise. Then a harder twist. The attack wasn't random. A secret deal. A rival in the shadows. And rumors that the hero was planted. Was he set up? Or is someone trying to break them? 2 lives. 1 chance. Clear his name. Keep his daughter. Protect her company. When love meets fear and truth fights money, who wins? And will courage and faith save them before the board and the court tear their new family apart? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead as Jack Lawson guided his mop across the polished marble floor of Chase Enterprises' lobby. His movements were steady and practiced, creating smooth figure eights that gleamed in the dim evening light. The massive skyscraper felt empty at this hour, with only the occasional click of security cameras and the swish of his mop breaking the silence. Jack glanced at his watch. 9:45 p.m. Lily would be finishing her homework by now, probably curled up on their worn couch with a textbook. The thought of his 13-year-old daughter brought a gentle smile to his weathered face. She was the reason he worked these late shifts, the reason he took pride in every floor he cleaned, every window he polished. Almost done, almost home, he mumbled to himself, humming an old military cadence under his breath. The tune reminded him of simpler days, when he wore sergeant's stripes instead of a janitor's uniform. But life had other plans, and after losing Sarah, Lily needed him more than the Army did. The lobby's massive windows reflected his image. Tall, broad-shouldered, with gray beginning to pepper his dark hair. His uniform might be different now, but his military bearing remained, even while pushing a mop bucket. Jack was wringing out his mop for the final time when a sound echoed through the quiet building. A woman's scream, distant but clear, coming from the direction of the underground parking garage. His body tensed, military instincts kicking in instantly. Without hesitation, he dropped the mop and sprinted toward the parking garage entrance. His boots squeaked against the fresh-cleaned floor as he ran, his heart pounding with each step. Another scream, closer now, mixed with the sound of a struggle. The parking garage was dimly lit, the shadows between cars creating dark pockets where anything could hide. Jack moved swiftly but cautiously, his eyes scanning for movement. The sounds led him deeper into the garage, toward the reserved executive spaces. That's when he saw them. A tall figure in black, wearing a ski mask, had a woman pinned against a luxury car. Even in the poor light, Jack recognized her face from countless company newsletters and TV appearances. Victoria Chase, CEO of Chase Enterprises. The attacker had one hand over her mouth, the other holding something that glinted metallically in the dim light. Victoria's eyes were wide with terror, her expensive suit jacket torn at the shoulder. Jack didn't hesitate. "Hey!" he shouted, his voice booming through the garage with command that came from years of military service. The masked man jerked his head toward the sound, momentarily loosening his grip on Victoria. That split second was all Jack needed. He charged forward, his body moving with the muscle memory of combat training. The attacker shoved Victoria aside and turned to face Jack, slashing with what was now clearly a knife. Jack weaved to the side, the blade missing him by inches. He grabbed the attacker's wrist with one hand while driving his other fist into the man's solar plexus. The impact was solid, forcing air from the attacker's lungs in a harsh grunt. The knife clattered to the concrete as the masked man stumbled backward, but he recovered quickly, throwing a wild punch that Jack blocked with his forearm. Jack countered with a swift combination, a jab to disorient, followed by a powerful cross that connected with the attacker's jaw, even through the mask. The man staggered, but before he could regain his balance, Jack swept his legs out from under him. The attacker hit the ground hard, and Jack was on him immediately, using his weight to pin the man down while twisting his arm behind his back in a secure hold. "Don't move," Jack ordered, his voice stern and controlled despite his racing heart. The attacker struggled briefly, but stopped when Jack increased pressure on his twisted arm. Victoria had pressed herself against a concrete pillar, her chest heaving as she tried to catch her breath. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, and her eyes were still wide with shock, But she was alive and apparently uninjured. The sound of running footsteps echoed through the garage as security finally arrived, their radios crackling with activity. Red and blue lights began to flash at the garage entrance, reflecting off the cars and creating a strobing effect. "Over here," Victoria called out, her voice shaky but commanding. Several guards rushed toward them, their footsteps thundering on the concrete. Jack maintained his hold on the attacker until the security team reached them. 2 guards took over, roughly hauling the masked man to his feet and cuffing him. Another guard spoke rapidly into his radio, calling for police backup. Only then did Jack stand up, his janitor's uniform dusty from the scuffle. He took a deep breath, adrenaline still coursing through his system. Years of military training had taken over, making his actions almost automatic. But now the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. Victoria pushed herself away from the pillar on unsteady legs. Her eyes locked onto Jack's face, really seeing him for the first time. Recognition flickered across her features as she realized he was the janitor she'd passed countless times in the hallways without a second glance. She took a step toward him, her designer heels clicking on the concrete. Despite her disheveled appearance, she carried herself with dignity as she approached. Her voice was soft but clear as she said, "You saved my life." Jack shifted uncomfortably under her intense gaze, suddenly very aware of his worn uniform and the smell of cleaning products that clung to him. "Just did what anyone would do, ma'am," he replied quietly. Police sirens wailed closer, their sound echoing through the parking garage. Red and blue emergency lights painted the walls in alternating colors as more vehicles arrived. Security guards and police officers swarmed the area, their radios creating a cacophony of overlapping chatter. Victoria kept her eyes fixed on Jack, looking at him as if trying to solve a puzzle. "No," she said, shaking her head slightly. "Not anyone would have done that. You." She paused, her voice growing stronger. "You saved my life." The morning sun streamed through the small kitchen window of Jack's modest apartment, casting warm light across the worn but clean countertops. He stood at the stove, carefully flipping pancakes with his left hand, keeping his bruised right hand tucked against his side. The sweet aroma of maple syrup filled the cozy space. "Dad, you're burning the edges again," Lily called out from her seat at their small kitchen table. Her schoolbook spread around her half-eaten breakfast. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she wore her favorite blue sweater, the one Jack had saved 3 extra shifts to buy for her birthday. "Can't get anything past you, can I?" Jack chuckled, sliding the slightly crispy pancake onto a plate. His knuckles throbbed, but he managed to keep his expression neutral. Lily's keen eyes caught the slight wince he couldn't quite hide. "What happened to your hand?" She set down her fork, concern creasing her forehead. "Just a little accident at work." Jack turned back to the stove, but Lily was already beside him, gently taking his hand in hers. "These look like fighting bruises," she said, her voice carrying a wisdom beyond her 13 years. "Did you get in trouble?" Jack sighed, turning off the burner. "Actually, your old man helped someone last night. Someone who needed it." Lily's eyes widened. "Like a superhero." A grin spread across her face. "Wait until I tell Jenny at school that my dad's secretly Batman." "Hey now," Jack laughed, ruffling her hair with his good hand. "Let's keep the superhero talk to a minimum. I'm just a janitor who happened to be in the right place at the right time." "A janitor with super-secret army training," Lily corrected, returning to her breakfast. "That's what makes you special, Dad." Jack watched his daughter eat, his heart swelling with love and pride. She'd grown up so fast after her mother passed, somehow managing to keep her spirit bright despite everything they'd been through. Later that morning, Jack pushed his cleaning cart through the familiar hallways of Chase Enterprises, trying to ignore the curious glances from office workers who'd obviously heard about last night's events. He'd just finished cleaning the 32nd floor bathrooms when his radio crackled. "Mr. Lawson," the security desk called, "please report to the executive floor. Ms. Chase would like to see you." Jack's stomach tightened. He'd hoped to avoid any fuss about last night. Taking a deep breath, he straightened his gray uniform and took the elevator to the top floor. The executive level was another world compared to the spaces he usually cleaned. Thick carpet muffled his steps, and original artwork hung on walls covered in rich wooden paneling. A sleek desk occupied by an immaculately dressed assistant stood guard before massive double doors. "Mr. Lawson?" The assistant smiled warmly. "Miss Chase is expecting you. Please go right in." Victoria Chase's office was larger than Jack's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a stunning view of Dallas, and elegant furniture that probably cost more than he made in a year was arranged throughout the space. Victoria stood as he entered, looking perfectly put together in a tailored navy suit, though he noticed a small bruise near her temple from the previous night's attack. "Mr. Lawson," she said, her voice warm but professional, "please, sit down." She gestured to a leather chair that probably cost more than his monthly rent. "I prefer to stand, ma'am," Jack replied politely, his hands clasped behind his back in an unconsciously military pose. "And Jack is fine." Victoria studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Jack it is then. I wanted to thank you personally for what you did last night. The police told me the attacker had a knife. You quite literally saved my life. Anyone would have done the same, Miss Chase." "Victoria," she corrected, moving around her desk to stand closer. "And no, they wouldn't have. Most people would have called security or run the other way." "You didn't hesitate." Her eyes fell to his bruised hand. "You were hurt." Jack shifted uncomfortably. "It's nothing, ma'am. Victoria, I've had worse. You're military, aren't you? I can tell by your bearing. Former Army sergeant. 2 tours in Afghanistan." Victoria's expression softened with understanding. "And now you're working here as a janitor," Jack finished firmly without shame. "It's honest work, and it pays the bills." "Do you have family?" Victoria asked, leaning against her desk. Jack hesitated, then decided there was no harm in answering. "A daughter, Lily. She's 13. And her mother passed away 3 years ago. Cancer." Victoria's perfectly composed expression flickered with genuine sympathy. "I'm so sorry." She paused, then added, "It must be challenging, raising her alone." "We manage," Jack said simply, though his voice carried a quiet pride. "Lily's a good kid. Smart. Makes it easy." Victoria smiled, and for a moment her carefully maintained CEO persona slipped, revealing something warmer underneath. "I'd love to meet her sometime. Perhaps we could—" "That's very kind," Jack interrupted gently, "but we're doing fine on our own. If there's nothing else, I should get back to work." Victoria straightened, her professional mask sliding back into place, though her eyes remained curious. "Of course. Thank you again, Jack. Truly." Jack nodded respectfully and turned to leave. As he reached the door, Victoria's voice stopped him. "You know, Lily must be very proud to have such a brave father." Jack looked back at her, allowing a small smile. "She thinks I'm Batman." He closed the door behind him, leaving Victoria standing in her expensive office, an intrigued expression playing across her face. Victoria Chase's personal assistant hovered near her shoulder, touching up her makeup while another staff member adjusted the collar of her cream silk blouse. The morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of her private office highlighted the subtle tremor in her usually steady hands as she reviewed her meeting notes. "The foundation looks perfect, Miss Chase," her makeup artist said, stepping back to admire her work. "You can't see any trace of last night's incident." Victoria's fingers unconsciously traced the faint bruise hidden beneath layers of concealer on her cheek. Her thoughts drifted to the janitor, Jack Lawson. In that moment of terror, he'd appeared like a guardian angel in worn work clothes and scuffed boots, so different from the polished executive she usually surrounded herself with. "That will be all," Victoria said, rising from her chair. Her team scattered like startled birds, leaving her alone with her reflection in the window. The Dallas skyline stretched out before her, a steel and glass kingdom she'd helped build. But this morning, it felt somehow hollow. Her heels clicked against marble as she made her way to the boardroom. The familiar sound usually filled her with confidence, but today each step felt heavy with uncertainty. The attack had shaken her more than she cared to admit, not just the violence, but the raw humanity of her rescue. The boardroom doors opened to reveal 12 identical leather chairs surrounding a massive mahogany table. The board of directors rose as she entered, a sea of expensive suits and carefully neutral expressions. Victoria took her place at the head of the table, spine straight, chin lifted. "Good morning," she said, her voice clear and commanding. "Shall we begin?" The meeting progressed smoothly through quarterly reports and projection analyses. Victoria maintained her usual sharp focus, though images of Jack's quiet strength kept surfacing in her mind. The way he'd stood in her office yesterday, dignified despite his worn uniform, speaking of his daughter with such genuine love. There is one final matter to address. Bernard Matthews, the eldest board member, cleared his throat. Concerning last night's unfortunate incident. The room grew still. Victoria felt every eye fixed upon her. The situation was handled quietly, she said. Our security protocols have been reviewed and enhanced. Yes, but there's the matter of the janitor. Elizabeth Whitmore cut in, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the table. We understand you've been particularly grateful for his assistance. Victoria's jaw tightened. Mr. Lawson acted heroically. He likely saved my life. Indeed, Bernard nodded. However, Chase Enterprises maintains certain standards. Certain appearances must be considered. Your position demands discretion in all associations. Are you suggesting I shouldn't acknowledge the man who prevented my assault? Victoria's voice carried an edge of ice. We're suggesting, Elizabeth said smoothly, that a brief thank you note and perhaps a modest bonus would be more appropriate than personal meetings in your office. The press already circles like vultures. We can't risk any misinterpretations. Victoria studied the faces around her, masks of corporate concern hiding age-old prejudices. These people had been her mentors, her peers, her support system. Yet suddenly their world felt suffocating. Your concerns are noted, she said, finally gathering her papers. Meeting adjourned. The board members filed out, leaving Victoria alone with her thoughts. She walked to the window, pressing her forehead against the cool glass. Below, the city hummed with life. Real people living real lives, like Jack Lawson and his daughter. When had she last felt that real, that genuine? Jack's humble grace had stirred something in her she'd thought long buried under spreadsheets and shareholders' meetings. His calloused hands and honest eyes offered no pretense, no political maneuvering, just simple human kindness. Victoria gathered her belongings and headed for the elevator. Her assistant jumped up, phone already in hand. Your car's waiting, Ms. Chase. Robert can have you home in. Cancel it, Victoria said. I think I'll walk through the lobby today. But Ms. Chase, Victoria was already walking away, her heels striking a determined rhythm against the floor. The elevator descended smoothly, and she used the time to compose herself, to sort through the unsettling emotions the board meeting had stirred up. The lobby stretched before her, all polished marble and soaring columns. And there, near the entrance, was Jack Lawson. He knelt beside a coffee spill, his movements efficient and practiced as he worked the stain from the floor. Even in this mundane task, she noticed the dignity in his bearing, the quiet pride in doing his job well. As if sensing her presence, Jack looked up. Their eyes met across the lobby, his warm brown gaze meeting her cool blue one. For a moment, all the artificial barriers of class and position fell away. No board of directors, no corporate image to maintain, just two people, connected by a moment of truth in the darkness of a parking garage. Then someone called Jack's name, and the moment broke. Victoria continued toward the door, her heart beating an unfamiliar rhythm. The board's warnings echoed in her mind, but for the first time in years, she found herself questioning whether their version of success was worth the price of her humanity. The bell above Joe's diner chimed as the evening crowd trickled in. Jack Lawson sat across from his daughter Lily in their usual booth, the red vinyl seats cracking slightly as they shifted. The familiar smell of coffee and grilled onions filled the air while fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a warm glow on the worn Formica table. "Dad, you barely touched your meatloaf," Lily said, pointing her fork at his plate. Her own plate was nearly clean, just a few green beans remaining. Jack managed a tired smile. "Just thinking, sweetheart." His eyes drifted to the stack of bright yellow flyers on the counter. The words Annual Veterans Support Fundraiser stood out in bold letters, along with pictures of American flags. "Is it about the fundraiser?" Lily asked, following his gaze. "Mrs. Rodriguez said the community center really needs a new roof this year." "Yeah, donations have been slower than usual." Jack pushed a piece of meatloaf around his plate. "Times are tough for everyone." The diner's door chimed again, but Jack didn't look up until he heard gasps and whispers ripple through the restaurant. There, looking somehow both out of place and completely confident, stood Victoria Chase. Her designer suit and perfectly styled hair contrasted sharply with the diner's humble interior. Lily's eyes widened. "Dad, isn't that Miss Chase?" Jack said, straightening in his seat. This is unexpected. Victoria walked toward their booth, her heels clicking against the linoleum floor. Please call me Victoria. She smiled warmly at Lily. And you must be Lily. Your father's told me about you. He has? Lily beamed, then shot a questioning look at her father. Victoria gestured to the empty space beside Lily. May I? Jack nodded, still looking stunned. Victoria slid into the booth, somehow making this simple action look elegant. The other diners tried to pretend they weren't staring, but their furtive glances were obvious. I wanted to thank you again, Jack, Victoria said, her voice softer than it had been in her office. What you did, it means more than I can express. Jack's cheeks reddened slightly. Anyone would have done the same. No, Victoria said firmly. They wouldn't have. Her eyes fell on the fundraiser flyers. What's this? Before Jack could answer, Lily jumped in. It's for the veterans in town. Dad helps organize it every year. They're trying to fix the community center roof, but… Lily, Jack said gently. But Victoria was already reaching for one of the flyers. This is wonderful, she said, studying the paper. The whole community comes together? Jack nodded reluctantly. It's nothing fancy. Just a barbecue, some music, games for the kids. The donations help local vets with housing, medical bills, that sort of thing. Victoria's eyes lit up. I'd love to contribute. And attend, if that's allowed. The diner seemed to grow quieter if possible. Jack shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Ms. Chase, Victoria, you don't have to do that. It's really just a small local event. Please? She looked between Jack and Lily. I'd like to see this side of the community. No press, no fanfare. Just me. Lily's face brightened. Can she come, Dad? Please? Jack looked at his daughter's hopeful expression, then at Victoria's genuine smile. Something in her eyes told him this wasn't about charity or obligation. She actually wanted to be there. It's this Saturday, he said finally. But I should warn you, it's nothing like the galas you're probably used to. We serve hot dogs on paper plates and drink lemonade from plastic cups. Victoria's smile widened. Sounds perfect. She pulled out her phone. Let me make a donation right now. That's not necessary, Jack started. Jack, Victoria said, looking up from her phone. Please let me do this. Not because I feel obligated, but because it matters. She turned to Lily. Your father saved my life. The least I can do is help him save others. Lily watched the exchange with careful eyes, a small smile playing at her lips. Jack recognized that look. It was the same one her mother used to have when she knew something others didn't. Just keep it reasonable, Jack said finally. We're not looking to build a mansion. Victoria nodded, tapping on her phone. A moment later, Joe himself appeared at their table, his eyes wide. Ms. Chase, I just got the notification. That donation, it's for a good cause, Victoria said simply. She stood up, smoothing her suit. Saturday, then? What time should I arrive? It starts at noon, Lily offered before Jack could speak. I could show you around. Jack couldn't help but smile at his daughter's enthusiasm. Just remember, it's a small-town thing. Victoria finished for him. Her eyes sparkled as she added, sometimes small towns teach the biggest lessons. She gave them both a warm smile. I'll see you Saturday. As Victoria walked out of the diner, the bell chiming behind her, Jack watched her go with a mixture of confusion and something else he couldn't quite name. Lily reached across the table and squeezed his hand. I like her, Dad, she said softly. Jack looked down at his barely touched meatloaf, trying to ignore the warmth spreading through his chest. Yeah, he murmured. She's different than I expected. The diner gradually returned to its normal volume of clinking silverware and quiet conversations, but something had shifted in the air. Jack couldn't shake the feeling that their simple life was about to become a lot more interesting. Joe appeared at their table again, still looking dazed. Jack, you're not going to believe how much she… I don't want to know… Jack cut him off quickly but smiled. Just make sure it goes where it needs to go. Sure thing. Joe nodded, then paused. You know, for a billionaire CEO, she seems pretty down to earth. Jack looked out the window where Victoria's car was pulling away from the curb. Yeah, he said quietly. She does. The community hall buzzed with early morning activity as Jack and Lily arrived, their footsteps echoing on the worn wooden floor. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, catching dust motes that danced in the air. A handful of veterans were already there, carefully unfolding chairs and arranging tables for the evening's fundraiser. "Need a hand with those streamers, Pete?" Jack called out to a gray-haired man wobbling on a stepladder. He quickly crossed the room, steadying the ladder with practiced ease. "Jack Lawson?" Pete grinned down at him. "Always showing up right when we need you, aren't you?" Lily had already found her way to a box of decorations, pulling out strings of twinkling lights and American flag bunting. She worked methodically, sorting them into neat piles on a nearby table. "Hey, look who's here!" A booming voice echoed through the hall. Mike Thompson, still barrel-chested despite his 60 years, strode over with arms wide open. "Our hometown hero." Jack ducked his head, embarrassed by the attention. "Just lending a hand, Mike. Like always." More veterans filtered in, each greeting Jack with warm handshakes and hearty backslaps. They swapped stories as they worked, their laughter filling the space with comfortable camaraderie. Lily watched her father from across the room, smiling at how his shoulders relaxed among his old friends. "Remember that time in Baghdad?" Carlos Martinez called out. "When Sergeant Lawson here carried Thompson 3 miles after that IED?" "How could I forget?" Mike chuckled. "Best piggyback ride of my life." Jack shook his head, but couldn't hide his smile. Anyone would have done the same. As the afternoon wore on, the hall transformed. String lights crisscrossed the ceiling, casting a warm glow. Red, white, and blue decorations adorned every surface, and round tables dotted the floor, each topped with simple centerpieces made by local school children. The first guests began arriving at sunset, filling the hall with chatter and the rustle of formal attire. Jack tugged at his tie, his only one, carefully pressed for the occasion. Lily had helped him pick out a dark blue suit from the thrift store, and she'd done her best to make it look new. "You look handsome, Dad," Lily assured him, straightening his collar. She wore a pretty yellow dress that had once been her mother's, altered carefully by their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez. Then the crowd near the entrance hushed, heads turning toward the door. Victoria Chase stood in the doorway wearing a simple navy blue dress that somehow managed to look both elegant and approachable. Her usual sharp corporate edge had softened, replaced by something warmer. "Miss Chase," Jack managed, making his way over to her. "I didn't think you'd actually come." Victoria's smile was genuine. "I wouldn't miss it. Though I hope I'm not overdressed." "You look perfect," Lily piped up, appearing at her father's elbow. "Want to see the memory wall we made? Dad's picture is up there." Before Victoria could respond, Mike Thompson's voice boomed through the microphone at the front of the hall. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we start tonight's festivities, I'd like to say a few words about one of our own." Jack's face reddened. "Mike, don't." "Sergeant Jack Lawson served 2 tours in Iraq," Mike continued, ignoring Jack's protest. "He saved my life and the lives of countless others. But his service didn't end when he came home. Every time someone in this community needs help, a broken fence, a ride to the doctor, a shoulder to lean on, Jack's there. He embodies what it means to be a true American hero." Victoria watched as people around the hall nodded in agreement. She saw the respect in their eyes, the genuine affection. This wasn't the quiet janitor she passed in her building's hallways. This was a man who commanded respect not through power or position, but through quiet strength and unwavering dedication to others. The band struck up a slow song, and couples began moving to the dance floor. Victoria felt a small nudge against her arm. Lily, wearing a conspiratorial smile. "Dad's a pretty good dancer," she said innocently. "Mom taught him." Jack shot his daughter a look that was half exasperation, half amusement. "Lily, would you like to dance?" Victoria asked, surprising herself with the directness of the question. For a moment, Jack hesitated. Then he offered his hand, calloused and warm. "I might step on your toes." "I'll risk it," she smiled, letting him lead her to the dance floor. They moved together under the twinkling lights, finding an easy rhythm. Jack's hand was steady at her waist, respectful but sure. Victoria felt herself relaxing into the moment, away from board meetings and profit margins and corporate politics. "Your community really loves you," she said softly. "They're good people," Jack replied. "We look out for each other here." The song continued, and Victoria found herself drawing slightly closer. Jack smelled like fresh soap and something warm and indefinable. Nothing like the expensive cologne she was used to. It was nice, real, Then she caught the whispers. Isn't that Victoria Chase, the CEO? What's she doing here? Slumming it with the locals? Poor Jack. He doesn't need that kind of attention. The words drifted across the dance floor like autumn leaves, sharp-edged and intrusive. Victoria felt Jack's posture stiffen slightly. Though his steps never faltered, his jaw tightened, and she could see him starting to pull back, creating distance between them. The moment shattered like fine crystal dropping onto concrete. The magic of their dance dissolved under the weight of reality. She was a billionaire CEO, he was a janitor in her building, and the whole world seemed determined to remind them of that fact. The fundraiser's warmth faded into the cool night air as Jack and Victoria stepped outside the community hall. Their shoes crunched against the gravel parking lot, and the distant sounds of laughter and music filtered through the building's walls. The moon hung full and bright above them, casting long shadows across the nearly empty lot. Victoria hugged her arms against the evening chill, her elegant dress catching the glow of the street lamps. Jack noticed her slight shiver, and, without thinking, shrugged off his worn leather jacket and draped it over her shoulders. Such a gentleman, Victoria said softly, pulling the jacket closer. The oversized garment somehow made her look smaller, more vulnerable than the powerful CEO who commanded boardrooms. Thank you for tonight, Jack, for letting me be part of this. They walked slowly toward her car, a sleek, black Mercedes that stood out starkly against the pickup trucks and modest sedans still parked nearby. Jack's hands were in his pockets, his white dress shirt crisp in the moonlight. You know, Victoria continued, I've attended hundreds of charity galas and corporate events, but this, she gestured back toward the hall. This was different, real. The way everyone looks out for each other, knows each other's stories. I've never experienced anything like it. Jack nodded, understanding in his eyes. That's what happens when you build something authentic. These folks, they've been through hell together, or alone. But they found each other. They reached her car, but Victoria made no move to leave. Instead, she leaned against the driver's side door, looking up at the star-filled sky. Do you know what struck me most? The way they talked about you, Jack. Not as the janitor from Chase Enterprises, but as someone who's always there when they need help. Moving furniture for elderly veterans, fixing cars, watching kids while single moms work extra shifts. Jack shifted uncomfortably, unused to such direct praise. Just trying to be useful. That's all. It's more than that. Victoria's voice grew softer. You create connection, community. Meanwhile, I sit in my corner office, surrounded by people who only want something from me, and I. She trailed off, vulnerability creeping into her usually confident tone. And you what? Jack prompted gently. I'm lonely, she admitted, the words barely above a whisper. Successful, powerful, wealthy, and completely alone. Everyone sees the CEO, the name on the building. Nobody sees me. Jack's expression softened as he recognized the pain in her voice. He leaned against the car beside her, their shoulders almost touching. I understand, lonely, he said quietly. After Sarah, my wife, passed, it felt like someone had turned off all the lights in the world. If it wasn't for Lily. Victoria turned to face him, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. How do you do it? Keep going. Keep caring about others when you're hurting. Because Sarah taught me that love multiplies, it doesn't divide, Jack replied, his voice thick with emotion. The more you give, the more you have. She believed that. Living it honors her memory. She sounds wonderful, Victoria said softly. She was. The kind of person who'd bring soup to sick neighbors and remember everyone's birthday. Lily has her smile. Jack's face held a mixture of pride and sadness. But sometimes, late at night when Lily's asleep and the house is quiet, that's when the loneliness feels heaviest. Victoria finished for him. Yeah, Jack agreed, meeting her gaze. Exactly. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, sharing the weight of their confessions. The night air hummed with crickets and distant traffic, a gentle breeze rustling through nearby trees. Victoria turned toward Jack, her face close to his. In her eyes, he saw something new. Not the calculating gaze of a CEO, but the tender vulnerability of a woman who understood his pain. She leaned in slowly, her breath warm against his cheek. Jack's heart thundered in his chest, but he pulled back gently, his hands coming to rest lightly on her shoulders. "Victoria," he said softly, regret coloring his voice. "Our worlds are too different." The moment hung between them, fragile as spun glass, filled with unspoken possibilities and quiet resignation. Victoria stood perfectly still, Jack's jacket still draped around her shoulders, as the night wrapped around them like a protective blanket, keeping their shared moment of vulnerability safe from the outside world. Victoria's heels clicked against the polished marble floors of Chase Enterprises' executive level. Morning sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the corridor. She adjusted her blazer, squared her shoulders, and pushed open the heavy wooden doors to the boardroom. 12 faces turned to stare at her. The morning light caught the silver hair of Gerald Matthews, the board's chairman, as he sat at the head of the long mahogany table. His expression was carved from stone. "Good morning," Victoria said, taking her usual seat. The leather chair felt unusually cold. "I trust you enjoyed yourself at the community event last night?" Gerald's voice dripped with barely concealed disdain. Victoria's spine stiffened. "The Veterans Fundraiser?" "Yes, I did. Chase Enterprises made a substantial donation to support our local heroes." "That's not what concerns us." Sandra Peterson, another board member, slid her tablet across the table. On the screen was a grainy photo of Victoria dancing with Jack, his hand respectfully at her waist. The image had already made its way to social media. Would someone care to explain why this matters? Victoria kept her voice steady, though her heart began to race. Gerald leaned forward, folding his hands on the table. "You were seen dancing with the janitor, Victoria. The help. Do you have any idea what this looks like?" "His name is Jack Lawson," Victoria corrected sharply. "And he's a decorated veteran who saved my life? Or have you forgotten that incident in the parking garage?" "Gratitude is one thing," Sandra cut in. "Public familiarity is another. Chase Enterprises has spent decades building a reputation of excellence and exclusivity. Our shareholders expect a certain standard." Victoria's fingers curled around the armrests of her chair. "A standard of what exactly? Elitism? Prejudice? Reality," Gerald snapped. "We operate in a world of perception, Victoria. Your father understood this. Every move we make is scrutinized. Every association matters." The mention of her father made Victoria's chest tighten. She watched as Gerald nodded to his assistant, who distributed thick folders to everyone present. "Our PR team has prepared a detailed analysis," Gerald continued. "Social media engagement shows a 15% negative reaction to your appearance at this event. Several major investors have already called with concerns." Victoria flipped through the folder, her anger rising with each page. Graphs, charts, and projections all pointed to one conclusion. Her connection to Jack was being viewed as a liability. "This is ridiculous," she said. "He's a good man who mops our floors," Sandra interrupted. "Victoria, dear, wake up. You're the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, not some small-town socialite who can afford to indulge in charitable pet projects." The words stung like slaps. Victoria thought of Jack's quiet dignity, of Lily's bright smile, of the respect in the eyes of every veteran at that fundraiser. None of that showed in these cold corporate analyses. "The board's recommendation is clear," Gerald declared. "Distance yourself immediately. No more public appearances. No more dancing. No more, whatever this is. The company's reputation must come first." Across town, in his modest kitchen, Jack Lawson poured his second cup of coffee. Lily had just left for school, leaving behind the familiar scent of strawberry shampoo and teenage energy. He smiled, remembering how she'd teased him about dancing with Victoria the night before. The mail slot clinked, and envelopes scattered across the welcome mat. Jack gathered them up, sorting through bills and advertisements until his hands froze on a thick, cream-colored envelope from Whitman Associates, Attorneys at Law. His coffee grew cold as he read the letter once, twice, 3 times. The legal language was dense, but the message was crystal clear. His late wife's parents were filing for custody of Lily. Their petition cited his unstable work situation and insufficient means to provide appropriate opportunities for the child's development. Jack's hands began to shake. The letter mentioned his recent involvement in a violent incident, the night he'd saved Victoria, and questioned his ability to maintain a secure environment. They'd even noted his double shifts and late hours as evidence of insufficient parental presence. He sank into a kitchen chair, the wooden legs scraping against linoleum. Through his window, he could see the neighbors' kids waiting for their school bus, their laughter suddenly seeming very far away. The thought of losing Lily made his throat close up. The letter trembled in his grip as his eyes fixed on one particular phrase. Emergency custody hearing scheduled for. The date was just 2 weeks away. Back in the Chase Enterprises boardroom, Victoria stood at the window, her back to the board members who were now discussing quarterly projections, as if they hadn't just tried to dictate her personal life. The city sprawled below, a maze of steel and glass that had always represented her power, her purpose. Now it felt like a cage. "Victoria?" Gerald's voice cut through her thoughts. "We need your attention on these numbers." She turned slowly, taking in their expensive suits, their comfortable certainty in their own importance. For the first time, she saw them clearly, not as mentors or colleagues, but as guards of a system that valued appearance over humanity. The letter from their legal team sat heavy in her hand, a formal warning about maintaining appropriate professional boundaries. Her other hand pressed against the cool glass of the window, and she found herself wondering what Jack was doing right now, if he was thinking of her too. Both of them, unknown to each other, stood frozen in their separate spaces. Victoria before her board, Jack at his kitchen table. Both holding papers that threatened to tear apart the delicate connection they'd begun to build. Both feeling the weight of worlds that seemed determined to keep them apart. The evening sun cast long shadows through Jack's modest living room as he sat on their worn but comfortable couch, his hands clasped tightly together. Lily sprawled on the floor, homework spread around her, humming quietly as she worked on her math problems. The familiar sight of her there, safe and content, made his heart ache with what he had to tell her. "Hey, sweetheart," Jack said softly. "Can you take a break for a minute? We need to talk about something important." Lily looked up, her pencil pausing mid-equation. Something in his tone made her sit up straight, crossing her legs beneath her. "What's wrong, Dad?" Jack patted the space next to him on the couch. "Come here, kiddo." She moved to sit beside him, her young face already clouding with worry. Jack wrapped an arm around her shoulders, drawing her close. "I got a letter today," he began, his voice steady despite the tremor in his heart. "From your grandparents' lawyer." Lily stiffened against him. "Mom's parents? The ones who never visit?" "Yeah, those grandparents." Jack took a deep breath. They're asking for custody of you, Lily." "What?" Lily pulled back, her eyes wide with fear. "No, they can't do that. They're trying to," Jack explained, keeping his voice calm even as Lily's began to shake. "They think they can give you a more stable home, but I don't want their home." Lily jumped up from the couch, her homework forgotten. Tears welled in her eyes. "I want our home. I want you, Dad." Hey. Jack stood, reaching for her. "Come here, baby." Lily crashed into his arms, sobbing. "Please don't let them take me away. Please, Dad, I don't want to go." "Listen to me," Jack said firmly, kneeling down to her level. "I am not going to let anyone take you away from me. You're my daughter, and I'm going to fight for you with everything I've got." Across town in her penthouse office, Victoria paced before the wall of windows overlooking the glittering Dallas skyline. Her reflection showed a woman at war with herself, designer suit perfect, posture rigid, but her eyes betrayed the turmoil within. The board's warnings echoed in her mind. Association with someone of his position could damage everything we've built. Victoria stopped pacing, her hand resting against the cool glass. Below, the city lights blurred like stars. She thought of Jack at the fundraiser, how the veterans had gathered around him with genuine respect and affection, how his quiet strength had filled the room. How Lily's eyes had sparkled with pride watching her father. "Miss Chase?" Her assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Human Resources sent up those files you requested." Victoria crossed to her desk and opened the folder. Inside were Jack's employment records, including his military service history, former Army sergeant, special operations training, distinguished service record, leadership commendations. She picked up her phone and dialed the head of corporate security. "James, I need you to create a new position, Senior Security Coordinator. The job requires military experience, crisis management skills, and..." She paused, a small smile forming. "Someone who already knows the building inside and out." After hanging up, Victoria sank into her chair, tension easing from her shoulders. The board might object, but Jack's qualifications were impeccable. This wasn't charity, it was smart business. And if it helped him keep his daughter. Back at Jack's house, Lily had finally cried herself into exhaustion. Jack sat on the edge of her small bed, gently stroking her hair as her breathing evened out in sleep. Tear tracks still marked her cheeks, and his heart clenched at the sight. "I promise you, baby girl," he whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." A soft knock at the front door made him look up. Through Lily's window, he caught the gleam of a luxury car parked outside. Jack carefully stood, making sure not to wake his daughter. He pulled her door partially closed and moved quietly through the house. Another gentle knock came just as he reached the door. Jack opened it to find Victoria Chase standing on his modest porch, looking somehow both determined and uncertain in the growing darkness. "Victoria?" He kept his voice low, surprised to see the CEO of Chase Enterprises at his door at this hour. "What are you doing here?" A sharp knock at the door made Jack look up from comforting Lily. He wiped his daughter's tears with his thumb. "Why don't you go wash your face, sweetheart? I'll see who it is." Lily nodded and headed to the bathroom while Jack approached the door. Through the peephole, he saw Victoria Chase, standing on his modest front porch, looking somehow both powerful and uncertain in her tailored business suit. Jack opened the door, immediately conscious of his worn jeans and faded t-shirt. "Miss Chase, is everything all right?" Victoria's usual corporate mask softened as she took in his concerned expression. "May I come in? I have something important to discuss with you." Jack hesitated, then stepped aside. Victoria entered, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood floor. Her eyes swept over the small living room, neat but modest, with framed photos of Lily everywhere and a folded American flag in a display case. "I'll be direct," Victoria said, turning to face him. "I want to offer you a position as head of corporate security at Chase Enterprises." Jack blinked, certain he'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" "You have the qualifications, military background, leadership experience, and you've already proved your capabilities." She pulled out a folder from her briefcase. "This isn't charity, Jack. I've reviewed your service record. You led troops in combat situations. You have advanced training and security protocols. You're exactly what we need." Jack took the folder with slightly shaking hands. The salary listed made his breath catch. It was several times what he made as a janitor. "I don't know what to say," he managed. "Say yes," Victoria replied. "This offer is based on merit, nothing else. You earned it the moment you saved my life, and your background confirms you're the right person for the job." From the hallway came a small voice. "Dad?" They both turned to see Lily, her face still slightly damp from washing. She looked between them with curious eyes. "Miss Chase is here with a job offer," Jack explained softly. Lily's face lit up. "Really?" Victoria nodded, her professional demeanor warming as she addressed Lily. "Your father would be perfect for this position. But it's his decision to make." Jack looked down at the contract again, thinking of the custody battle ahead. With this salary, he could afford a better lawyer, could provide more opportunities for Lily, could prove to the court he could give his daughter everything she needed. Pride warred with practicality in his chest. "I appreciate the offer, but I don't want special treatment." "This isn't special treatment," Victoria said firmly. "This is me recognizing talent and putting it to proper use. The fact that you're questioning it only proves your integrity, another qualification for the job." Jack sat heavily on the couch, still gripping the folder. Lily perched next to him, peering at the papers. "When would I start?" he asked finally. "Tomorrow morning. 8 a.m. sharp." Victoria's lips curved in a slight smile. "I'll have a suit waiting in your new office." The next morning found Jack standing in front of a mirror in his new office, adjusting an expertly tailored navy suit. The room was bigger than his entire kitchen at home, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Dallas. A knock at his door revealed his new assistant, a young man named Trevor who looked about as uncomfortable as Jack felt. "Sir, the morning security briefing starts in 5 minutes in the executive conference room," Trevor said, handing him a tablet. "The other department heads are already gathering." Jack nodded, squaring his shoulders. He'd led men into combat. He could handle a meeting. But walking into that conference room felt like entering enemy territory. The executives around the table barely concealed their skepticism, eyeing his new suit with thinly veiled disdain. One man, the CFO, Jack recalled from the personnel files, actually smirked. "Gentlemen," Jack said calmly, channeling his sergeant's voice. Let's review the overnight reports. For the next hour, Jack demonstrated his expertise, methodically addressing security vulnerabilities he'd noticed during his time as janitor. The smirks faded as he detailed specific improvements needed in the parking garage, where he'd saved Victoria, and outlined new protocols for executive protection. By meeting's end, the skepticism had shifted to reluctant respect. The CFO even nodded approval at one of Jack's suggestions. The rest of the day passed in a blur of security assessments, staff meetings, and system reviews. Jack's military training served him well, helping him organize the chaos into actionable plans. When he finally walked through his front door that evening, his new tie loosened and jacket draped over his arm, exhaustion weighed heavy on his shoulders. But beneath it was something else: pride. Real pride, earned through competence rather than charity. Lily bounded down the hallway to greet him, stopping short at the sight of his suit. Her eyes went wide. "Dad, you look like James Bond." Jack laughed, catching her in a hug. "I don't know about that, sweetheart, but it was a good day." Lily squeezed him tight, then pulled back to look at him seriously. "Mom would be proud of you, you know. She always said you were meant for more than just cleaning up after other people." Jack's throat tightened. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head, remembering Sarah's unwavering faith in him. "Thanks, kiddo. That means a lot." The elevator dinged softly as Jack stepped out onto the 45th floor of Chase Enterprises. His footsteps echoed in the empty hallway as he made his regular evening patrol. After 2 weeks as head of security, the building felt different at night. Not just a place he cleaned, but a space he protected. The city lights twinkled through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the polished marble floors. Jack checked each office methodically, his military training evident in his precise movements. His new uniform, a well-fitted dark suit, still felt strange after years in janitor's coveralls, but he was adjusting. As he rounded the corner near the executive offices, the scent of fresh coffee caught his attention. Light spilled from Victoria's office, and he found her standing by a small coffee machine, 2 cups in hand. "I thought you might want some company on your rounds," Victoria said, offering him a steaming cup. She'd shed her usual power suit for a more casual blouse and skirt, though she still managed to look elegant. "Thank you," Jack said, accepting the coffee. It was rich and fragrant, definitely not from the break room machine he was used to. "You're here late." "Sometimes I think better at night," Victoria replied. "Want to walk with me?" They fell into step together, moving through the quiet building. Jack sipped his coffee, surprised to find it exactly how he liked it. Just a touch of cream, no sugar. "You remembered how I take my coffee," he noted. Victoria smiled. "I pay attention to details. It's part of what makes me good at my job." She paused by the window, looking out at the Dallas skyline. "Speaking of jobs, how are you settling in?" "It's different," Jack admitted. "But good different. The team's starting to accept me, though I know some still see me as the janitor who got lucky." "They'll learn," Victoria said firmly, "just like I did, that there's so much more to you than first appearances suggest." They continued their patrol, passing through the silent cubicle farm of the main office floor. "Tell me about growing up in small-town Texas," Victoria said suddenly. "What was it like?" Jack thought for a moment, remembering. "Simple, in the best way. Everyone knew everyone. Friday night football games were like holidays. My dad worked at the local hardware store. Mom was a school teacher. We didn't have much, but we had enough." "Sounds wonderful," Victoria said softly. "What about you?" Jack asked. What was little Victoria Chase like? A shadow crossed her face. "Lonely. Big house, lots of toys. But my parents were always working. Nannies raised me, mostly. I had the best education money could buy. But," she trailed off, then laughed without humor. "The first time I really felt part of something was at that veterans fundraiser with you." Jack stopped walking, studying her face. In the dim light, with her guard down, she looked younger somehow, vulnerable. "Must have been hard," he said quietly. "It taught me to be strong," Victoria replied. "Independent. But sometimes," she moved to the window again, pressing her hand against the cool glass. "Sometimes I wonder what it would have been like to have what you had. Real family dinners, people who knew the real you, not just your family name." Jack joined her at the window. "It's never too late for that, you know." Victoria turned to face him, their shoulders almost touching. "That's what I'm beginning to learn," She checked her watch and sighed. "I should let you finish your rounds." They walked back to her office in comfortable silence. At her door, Victoria paused. "Thank you for the company, Jack." Her voice was soft, almost intimate in the quiet building. "I've never felt safer than when I'm with you." Their eyes met for a long moment, the air between them charged with unspoken possibilities. Then Victoria smiled gently and disappeared into her office, leaving Jack standing in the hallway, his empty coffee cup still warm in his hands. The night seemed different somehow as he continued his patrol, less lonely, more full of promise. Even the city lights seemed to twinkle a little brighter through the windows of Chase Enterprises, as if they too were keeping watch over the quiet moments shared between a billionaire CEO and her head of security. Jack stood awkwardly in front of the mirror in their small living room, tugging at the borrowed tuxedo sleeves. The black fabric felt stiff and foreign against his skin, so different from his usual work clothes or security uniform. Lily circled him with a critical eye, occasionally reaching up to straighten his bow tie or brush invisible lint from his shoulders. "Dad, stop fidgeting," Lily laughed, batting his hands away from the collar. "You look amazing, like James Bond, but way cooler." Her eyes sparkled with pride as she stepped back to admire her handiwork. "I feel ridiculous," Jack muttered, but couldn't help smiling at his daughter's enthusiasm. The tuxedo had been Victoria's idea. She'd insisted on having it sent over when she learned he didn't own one for the upcoming Chase Enterprises charity gala. Lily smoothed down the lapels with careful hands. "Miss Chase was right about the fit. How did she know your size just by looking at you?" Jack felt his cheeks warm slightly. "She's observant, that's all." He turned sideways, studying his reflection. The tuxedo did fit perfectly, though he felt like an imposter in such fancy clothes. "You're blushing, Dad," Lily giggled, poking him in the ribs. "You like her, don't you?" "That's enough of that, young lady," Jack said, but without any real stern. At work the next day, Jack couldn't ignore the whispers that followed him through the hallways of Chase Enterprises. Executive assistants paused their conversations when he passed, and some of the board members barely acknowledged his presence. But Victoria remained steadfast, her head held high whenever they walked together through the building. During their morning security briefing, Victoria surprised him by bringing up the gala. "Jack, I've made arrangements for Lily to attend as well," she said, sliding an elegant invitation across her desk. "Every guest is allowed to bring family, and I won't take no for an answer." Jack stared at the gold-embossed card. "Victoria, that's too much. These tickets must cost—" "Nothing," she interrupted firmly. "You're head of security now, and Lily is welcome as your guest." Her expression softened. "Besides, I'd love to see her all dressed up. She's such a wonderful girl." Throughout the day, Jack noticed how Victoria subtly but firmly included him in important meetings, introducing him as our head of security, with a tone that brooked no argument. When one board member made a thinly veiled comment about unusual hiring practices, Victoria's response was swift and sharp. "Mr. Lawson's military experience and proven courage make him exceptionally qualified for this position," she stated, her voice carrying across the conference room. "I trust him with my life, literally, and I suggest you all do the same." The whispers didn't stop entirely, but they changed tone. People began noticing how Jack carried himself with quiet dignity, how he treated everyone from the cleaning staff to the executives with equal respect. Some even started greeting him by name. That evening, Jack stood in front of his bedroom mirror again, this time alone. The tuxedo hung perfectly pressed on his closet door, ready for the gala in 2 days. His reflection showed a man he barely recognized. Not the soldier he'd been, not the janitor he'd become, but someone new. He ran his fingers along the smooth fabric, remembering Victoria's words from earlier. "You belong there, Jack, just as much as anyone else." But as he stared at his reflection, doubt crept in. Could he really step into Victoria's world of wealth and power? Would he ever truly fit in at these glamorous events? His calloused hands, though hidden by fine fabric, would still mark him as different. His military bearing would set him apart from the relaxed confidence of old money. And yet Victoria looked at him like none of that mattered. The sound of Lily humming in the kitchen brought a smile to his face. His daughter was already planning her own outfit, thrilled at the prospect of attending her first fancy party. Her excitement was contagious, but it couldn't completely quiet the nervous flutter in his stomach as he looked at himself in the mirror one last time. The man looking back at him stood straight and tall, years of military service evident in his posture, but his eyes held uncertainty as they studied his reflection, wondering if he was ready to step into a world so different from everything he'd known before. The grand ballroom of the Starlight Hotel sparkled like a sea of diamonds. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over marble floors, while Dallas's wealthiest citizens mingled in designer gowns and custom tuxedos. Jack stood just inside the entrance, his borrowed tuxedo suddenly feeling tight around his collar. Lily squeezed his hand, her blue party dress matching her eyes. "There are so many important people here," Lily whispered, her eyes wide as she took in the scene. A string quartet played softly in the corner, their music floating above the gentle murmur of conversation and tinkling champagne glasses. Jack swallowed hard. "Maybe we should." "Don't even think about leaving," Lily said firmly, showing wisdom beyond her 13 years. "Victoria invited us. We belong here." As if summoned by her name, Victoria appeared through the crowd. She wore a stunning red gown that seemed to float around her as she walked. Her usual businesslike demeanor had softened into something more graceful, more approachable. When she spotted them, her face lit up with a genuine smile. "Jack, Lily!" She embraced them both warmly, breaking every rule of corporate distance. "I'm so glad you came." She touched Lily's shoulder gently. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." Lily beamed. "Thanks. Dad's been nervous all day, but I told him he looks like James Bond." Victoria's eyes traveled over Jack's tuxedo and he felt his face warm. "She's right," Victoria said softly. "You clean up very well, Mr. Lawson." Before Jack could respond, a group of board members approached. He recognized them from the corporate offices, the same ones who had warned Victoria about associating with him. Their smiles were polite but didn't reach their eyes. "Victoria, darling," one woman said, her diamonds glinting. "The governor's wife is asking for you." "Of course." Victoria touched Jack's arm. "Save me a dance later." Without waiting for an answer, she glided away, every inch the powerful CEO. Jack and Lily found their assigned table, decorated with elaborate flower arrangements and fine china. Other guests joined them, mid-level executives who seemed unsure whether to treat Jack as security staff or an honored guest. Lily, however, charmed them easily with her natural warmth. The evening progressed through several courses of fancy food that Lily whispered she couldn't pronounce. Jack was just starting to relax when Victoria approached the podium at the front of the ballroom. The lights dimmed slightly, and conversation died away. "Good evening, everyone," Victoria began, her voice clear and strong. "Thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate another successful year at Chase Enterprises." She paused, her eyes finding Jack in the crowd. "But tonight, I want to talk about something more important than profit margins or stock prices. I want to talk about courage." The room grew very still. Jack felt Lily's hand slip into his under the table. 3 months ago, I was attacked in our corporate parking garage. Many of you read about it in the papers. What those articles didn't mention was that I owe my life to one man, a man who didn't hesitate to put himself in danger to help a stranger. Victoria's voice grew softer, more personal. That man was Jack Lawson, who worked as our building's janitor at the time. Hundreds of heads turned toward Jack's table. He sat very straight, his military training helping him maintain composure. "Jack exemplifies what true courage and honor mean," Victoria continued. "Not the kind that comes with wealth or position, but the kind that springs from character and conviction. He's a decorated veteran who continues to serve others every day. He's a devoted single father raising an extraordinary daughter." She smiled at Lily. "And he's the man who reminded me that real strength isn't measured by the size of our bank accounts, but by the size of our hearts." Applause erupted through the ballroom. Lily was crying quietly, happy tears streaming down her face. The executives at their table were now looking at Jack with genuine respect. "Please join me in honoring a true hero," Victoria concluded. "Jack Lawson, would you stand?" Jack rose slowly, feeling hundreds of eyes on him. The applause grew louder, and several people stood. Soon the entire room was giving him a standing ovation. He caught Victoria's eye across the room, and in that moment, all the social barriers between them seemed to vanish. After the speech, the dancing began. The string quartet played a waltz, and couples moved onto the dance floor. Victoria made her way through the crowd to Jack's table. "May I have this dance?" she asked, extending her hand. Jack hesitated only a moment before taking it. "I'm not very good at this," he warned. Just follow my lead, she whispered, drawing him onto the dance floor. Under the sparkling chandeliers, Victoria guided him through the steps. Her red gown swirled around them as they turned, and Jack found himself relaxing into the rhythm. The other dancers seemed to fade away until it felt like they were alone in their own private world. "Thank you," Jack said quietly, "for everything you said up there." Victoria's hand tightened slightly on his shoulder. "I meant every word." They moved together in perfect synchronization, as if they'd been dancing for years instead of minutes. The string quartet's music wrapped around them like silk, and Jack forgot to be conscious of his borrowed tuxedo or his uncertain steps. "You know," Victoria murmured, "I think this is the first time at one of these events that I've felt completely myself." Jack drew her a fraction closer, feeling the warmth of her hand in his. "Me too," he admitted, "even though I've never been to anything like this before." The chandeliers cast their golden light over Victoria's face as she looked up at him, and for that perfect moment everything else disappeared. The crowd, the pressure, the differences in their worlds. There was just the music, the dance, and the undeniable feeling that somehow, against all odds, they fit. The morning sun filtered through Jack's kitchen window, casting warm light on the scattered newspapers across his small dining table. His coffee grew cold as he stared at the headlines. Chase Enterprises Gala, CEO honors mystery hero, splashed across the society pages, accompanied by photos of him and Victoria dancing beneath the crystal chandeliers. Lily peered over his shoulder, still in her pajamas, her hair tousled from sleep. "Look, Dad, we're famous!" She pointed to a smaller photo of them arriving at the gala, but Jack's eyes fixed on the smaller print below. Questions arise about security chief's past. His phone buzzed. Another message from Victoria. "Don't read the papers. Come to my office when you can." Jack's stomach churned as he scanned deeper into the article. Words jumped out at him. Sudden promotion. Mysterious circumstances. Convenient timing. They'd even dug up his military record, questioning his honorable discharge and speculating about classified missions. "Time for school, kiddo," Jack said, forcing a smile as he folded the newspaper. Lily frowned, sensing his tension. "Is everything okay, Dad?" "Just fine, sweetheart." He kissed the top of her head. "Remember, Mrs. Martinez is picking you up today. I might be working late." The drive to Chase Enterprises felt longer than usual. Security guards who usually greeted him warmly now watched with uncertain eyes. In the elevator, conversations hushed as he entered. The weight of suspicious glances pressed against his shoulders. Victoria waited in her office, pacing behind her desk. Her usually perfect composure showed cracks, her hair slightly disheveled, worry lines creasing her forehead. "Jack," she rushed forward, touching his arm. "I'm so sorry about this. My PR team is already working to counter these ridiculous rumors. Victoria, maybe I should resign. This attention, it's not good for anyone." "Absolutely not." Her voice carried the same authority she used in board meetings. "You earned this position. I won't let tabloid gossip chase away the best security chief we've ever had." A knock interrupted them. Thompson, Victoria's head of legal affairs, entered with a thick folder. His face was grim. "Miss Chase, we have a situation." He glanced at Jack. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately?" "Whatever you have to say it here," Victoria insisted. Thompson cleared his throat. "The police investigation into Ms. Chase's attack has uncovered complications. The attacker had ties to Microtech Industries." "Our biggest competitor," Victoria whispered. "Yes. And," Thompson hesitated, "there's evidence suggesting inside knowledge of Ms. Chase's schedule that night. Someone had to have provided access codes, security patrol patterns." The implication hung heavy in the air. Jack felt his chest tighten. "You think I was involved?" "The timing is suspicious," Thompson admitted. "You were there that night. Got promoted shortly after." "That's enough." Victoria's voice cracked like a whip. "Jack saved my life, and we're grateful," Thompson said smoothly. "But the board is concerned. Microtech has been trying to acquire Chase Enterprises for years. A well-placed mole." Jack's phone buzzed again. This time, a text from Mrs. Martinez. "Reporters outside your house." Lily's scared. Took her to my place. His hands shook as he read the message. "I have to go." "Jack, wait." Victoria reached for him, but he was already moving. The drive home felt like a nightmare. He could see the crowd from blocks away. News vans, cameras, reporters clutching microphones. They swarmed his driveway, trampling Sarah's old flower garden that he and Lily still tenderly maintained. "Mr. Lawson, is it true you were involved in corporate espionage? Were you planted as a mole in Chase Enterprises? What's your relationship with Victoria Chase? Did you stage the attack?" The questions pelted him like hail as he pushed through to his front door. Inside, the house felt violated. Camera flashes strobed through the windows. Reporters pressed against the glass, trying to peek in. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages from unknown numbers. News outlets requesting comments. Jack sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. Sarah's photos smiled down at him from the wall, taken on their wedding day, before war and widowhood, and this crazy new chapter of his life. "What would you do?" he whispered to her image. His phone buzzed again. "Victoria, let me help, please." But Jack couldn't bring himself to respond. Outside, the reporters continued shouting questions. Inside, his peaceful life lay in pieces around him. He thought of Lily, scared and hiding at the Martinez's house. He thought of the custody case, how this scandal would look to a judge. The borrowed tuxedo still hung on his closet door, a reminder of last night's fairy tale that had turned into this morning's nightmare. Jack stared at it, remembering how proud Lily had looked, how warm Victoria's smile had been as they danced. Now, camera flashes continued to light up his windows like lightning in a storm. His phone buzzed with another message, this time from his lawyer about the custody case. The words blurred before his eyes. This publicity could be problematic. Jack moved through his house, drawing all the curtains. In the growing darkness, he could still hear the reporters outside, their voices a constant reminder that his simple life had somehow spiraled into territory he never wanted to enter. His military training had prepared him for many dangers, but not this kind of siege. The sound of breaking glass from the backyard made him jump. Someone had knocked over one of Lily's flower pots trying to get a better camera angle. Jack's jaw clenched as he heard the precious pottery, a Mother's Day gift she'd made herself, shatter on the concrete. This wasn't just about him anymore. His whole world, everything he'd built for Lily, their quiet life, their safety, was under attack. The simple dream of being a good father and living an honest life seemed to be slipping through his fingers like sand. As dusk settled over the neighborhood, the media circus showed no signs of dispersing. The lights from the news vans cast long shadows through his backyard, where he and Lily had hosted summer barbecues with the neighbors just weeks ago. Now, those same neighbors peeked nervously through their curtains at the chaos engulfing their quiet street. His cell phone screen lit up again. Victoria, trying to FaceTime him. Jack stared at her name, his finger hovering over the answer button. But before he could decide, another pot crashed in the backyard, followed by excited shouts from photographers thinking they'd caught movement inside the house. Jack let the call go to voicemail. He sat in his darkened living room, surrounded by the chaos outside, realizing that his life had crossed a line he never meant to cross. The simple joys of morning coffee with Lily, evening walks in the neighborhood, weekend grocery shopping, all of it now seemed like a distant memory from another life. The law office was small and cramped, nothing like the gleaming hallways of Chase Enterprises. Jack sat in a worn leather chair across from David Martinez, his lawyer and old friend from high school. Morning sunlight filtered through dusty Venetian blinds, casting stripes across the messy desk between them. "It's not good, Jack," David said, pushing his reading glasses up his nose. He spread out several newspaper clippings, each featuring photos from the gala. These headlines about corporate espionage. The timing couldn't be worse. Jack's shoulders slumped as he picked up one of the articles. His own face stared back at him, caught mid-dance with Victoria. What had felt magical that night now seemed like a dream crumbling to dust. "Your in-laws' lawyers have already contacted me," David continued, his voice heavy with concern. "They're painting you as unstable, Jack. First the night job as a janitor, then this sudden promotion, and now these accusations? They're saying Lily needs a more secure environment." Jack's jaw tightened. They'd never cared about Lily before. Sarah's parents barely visited when she was alive. His voice caught on his late wife's name. Now suddenly they want custody? "They've got money, Jack, and connections." David leaned forward, his expression grim. "They're claiming your involvement with Ms. Chase puts Lily at risk. The investigation into the attack, the corporate espionage angle, they're using it all." A knock at the door interrupted them. David's secretary poked her head in. Ms. Chase is here to see Mr. Lawson. Jack's heart skipped. Victoria swept in, elegant even in a simple business suit. Her face showed the strain of sleepless nights, but her eyes were determined. "I heard about the custody threat," she said, not bothering with pleasantries. "I'll testify for you, Jack. Tell them everything about that night, about your character, about how much Lily needs you." David straightened in his chair, suddenly alert to the possibility. "Miss Chase, your testimony would carry significant weight with the judge." But Jack was already shaking his head. "No, Victoria, I can't let you do that." "Don't be stubborn," she insisted, moving closer. "Your in-laws are using my company's situation against you. Let me help fix this." "Your board is already breathing down your neck," Jack said quietly. "If you publicly support me now, with all these accusations flying around." He met her eyes. "I won't risk your reputation. You've worked too hard for everything you've built." Victoria's professional mask cracked slightly. "Jack, please. I don't care about my reputation if it means—" "I care," he cut in firmly. "And Lily needs at least one of us to come out of this unscathed. If things go wrong, if I lose custody," his voice roughened, "she'll need someone in her corner with real influence." The silence in the small office grew thick with unspoken words. David busied himself with his papers, trying to give them privacy. Victoria moved to touch Jack's arm, but he stepped back. The small movement felt like a chasm opening between them. "We both know there's more to that night than what's in the papers," she said softly. "If you just tell me—" "I can't," Jack whispered. "Not yet. Please trust me." The pain in Victoria's eyes matched his own. She squared her shoulders, CEO mask sliding back into place. "Very well, Mr. Lawson. I'll respect your wishes." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "But I won't give up on you, either of you." After she left, David let out a long breath. "She really cares about you, Jack." "Yeah," Jack said roughly. "That's what worries me." The rest of the day passed in a blur of legal documents and mounting anxiety. By evening, Jack's head throbbed as he pulled into his driveway. Paparazzi had finally cleared out, but their presence lingered in the trampled flower beds Lily had planted last spring. Inside, he found Lily waiting up despite his text telling her not to. She was in her pajamas, curled up on the couch with her math homework spread around her. "Time for bed, kiddo," he said, trying to keep his voice light. She gathered her books slowly. "Did you see Ms. Chase today?" Jack helped her collect scattered pencils. "Yeah, I did." "Is she mad at us?" "No, honey." He wrapped an arm around her shoulders as they headed upstairs. "She's trying to help, actually. But sometimes grown-ups have to make hard choices to protect the people they care about." In her room, Lily climbed into bed, clutching the stuffed bear Sarah had given her years ago. Jack tucked the covers around her, just like he had every night since she was tiny. "The kids at school were talking," Lily said quietly. "About you in the newspapers. Tommy Miller said you might be a bad guy." Jack's heart clenched. He sat on the edge of her bed, smoothing her hair back. "What do you think?" "I think you're my dad," she said firmly. "And Mom always said you were the best man she ever knew." Tears pricked at Jack's eyes. He bent to kiss her forehead, trying to hide them. "Daddy?" Her small hand found his. "Don't give up, okay?" He squeezed her fingers gently, amazed at her strength. "Never, baby. I promise." He sat there until her breathing evened out in sleep, watching shadows play across her innocent face. His little girl, so much like her mother, seeing straight through to the heart of things. The weight of everything he stood to lose pressed down on his chest until he could barely breathe. But Lily's words echoed in his mind. Don't give up. For her, he never would. The morning sun hadn't yet touched the towers of Chase Enterprises when Jack Lawson entered the building for the last time. His security badge felt heavy in his hand as he made his way through the quiet lobby. A few early workers nodded to him, unaware that this was his final morning in the building. In his small office, Jack packed his few belongings into a cardboard box, a coffee mug Lily had given him, a framed photo of his unit from his Army days, and a small American flag that had sat on his desk. His resignation letter to HR was already submitted electronically, but there was one more letter he needed to deliver. Jack pulled out a simple white envelope with Victoria, written in his neat handwriting. He'd spent half the night writing and rewriting the words, trying to explain why he had to leave. The final version was brief but honest. Dear Victoria, thank you for believing in me when few others did. These past weeks have shown me a world I never thought I'd be part of, and your kindness has meant more than I can say. But I can't let the scandal surrounding me damage everything you've built. More importantly, I can't risk losing Lily. She's all I have left of her mother, and I have to protect her at all costs. You deserve someone who won't complicate your life. Someone whose past won't put your reputation at risk. I'll always be grateful for the time we shared. Take care of yourself. Jack. The elevator ride to the executive floor felt longer than usual. The offices were still empty, dawn barely breaking through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Jack placed the envelope carefully on Victoria's pristine desk, his hand lingering for a moment on the heavy paper. In the corner of her office stood a small table where they'd shared late-night coffee and conversations about their lives. He remembered how she'd laughed at his stories about Lily's childhood adventures, how her eyes had softened when he talked about his wife's passing. Those moments had felt real, like the walls between their worlds had temporarily vanished. Back in the security office, Jack handed his badge to the morning supervisor. "It's been an honor, sir," the young guard said, clearly confused by the sudden departure of his boss. Jack just nodded, unable to explain. Meanwhile, Victoria's morning began with the harsh voices of her board members in an emergency conference call. "The press is having a field day with these corporate espionage rumors," one director snapped. "We need you to make a public statement distancing yourself from Lawson immediately." Victoria sat at her desk, her usually perfect posture slumping slightly. "We don't have any proof that Jack was involved," she argued, but her voice lacked its usual force. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her shoulders like a physical thing. "The appearance of impropriety is enough," another board member cut in. "Chase Enterprises cannot afford to be associated with this kind of scandal. Think of the shareholders, Victoria." When she finally ended the call, Victoria noticed the envelope on her desk. Her hands trembled slightly as she read Jack's words. The paper crumpled in her grip, and for the first time in years, she felt tears threatening to fall. Her assistant knocked gently. "Ms. Chase? The press is asking for a statement about Mr. Lawson's resignation." Victoria straightened her spine, years of training taking over. "Tell them no comment at this time," she said, her voice steady despite the ache in her chest. After her assistant left, she stood at her window, looking down at the street below. A familiar figure carrying a cardboard box was walking away from the building, his shoulders squared against the morning wind. Across town, Jack entered his apartment, setting the box down heavily on the kitchen counter. Lily was at school. He couldn't bear to tell her about his resignation yet. The custody hearing notice sat on the table like a ticking bomb. His in-laws' lawyers had already contacted him, suggesting they might reconsider their custody suit if he agreed to let Lily live with them during the school year. The apartment felt eerily quiet. Jack walked to the bedroom and took down the photo of Sarah, Lily's mother, from the dresser. In the picture, she was laughing, her arms around a much younger Lily at the park. The sunlight had caught her hair just right, making it glow like a halo. "I don't know what to do, Sarah," he whispered, running his thumb over the frame. "I promised to keep her safe, to give her a good life, but everything's falling apart." His voice cracked slightly. "I need your strength now more than ever." The photo offered no answers, just Sarah's frozen smile and the memory of happier days. Jack sank onto the edge of his bed, still holding the picture. Outside, the city continued its morning rush, unaware of the quiet devastation within these walls. He closed his eyes and did something he hadn't done since Sarah died. He prayed, silently but fervently, for the strength to face whatever came next. The custody hearing date circled in red on his kitchen calendar seemed to mock him from across the room. In just 2 weeks, he could lose everything that mattered. The thought of Lily being taken away, of her growing up in her grandparents' cold mansion instead of in their warm little home, made his chest tighten with fear. The sound of a car horn outside startled him from his thoughts. For a brief moment, he hoped it might be Victoria, coming to tell him they could figure this out together. But the street below was full of strangers, each lost in their own world, none of them able to help him with the impossible choice he'd had to make. Jack placed Sarah's photo carefully back on the dresser, adjusting it until it was perfectly straight. Then he stood there, waiting for his vision to clear, preparing himself to be strong when Lily came home from school. He would have to explain why he'd left his job, why they might have to make changes, why sometimes love meant making painful choices. The courthouse loomed over Jack like a mountain of stone and judgment. He sat rigidly in the wooden chair, his military posture unable to hide the weariness in his shoulders. The courtroom's vaulted ceiling and polished wood panels felt suffocating, nothing like the warmth of the small home he'd made for Lily. Margaret and Richard Thompson, Lily's maternal grandparents, sat across the aisle. Their expensive suits and perfect posture screamed old money and influence. Their lawyer, a sharp-featured woman in designer clothes, stood at the podium. "Your Honor," the lawyer began, her voice cutting through the hushed courtroom. "Miss Lawson's recent involvement in a corporate scandal at Chase Enterprises raises serious concerns about his ability to provide a stable environment for Lily." Jack's hands tightened into fists under the table. His own lawyer, a kind but overworked public defender named Tom Martinez, shifted uncomfortably beside him. Furthermore, the Thompsons' lawyer continued, "Mr. Lawson's employment history shows instability, from military service to janitorial work, and most recently, a security position he's already resigned from. The pattern is clear." The judge, an older woman with silver-rimmed glasses, looked down at her notes. Jack could feel the weight of her gaze when she glanced his way. "My clients can provide Lily with the best education, stable home life, and financial security that Mr. Lawson simply cannot match." Jack's chest tightened. He thought of Lily waiting at home with their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez. His daughter had begged to come to court, but he couldn't bear to have her witness this. When it was their turn, Tom stood up, straightening his rumpled suit. "Your Honor, Jack Lawson is a decorated veteran who has raised his daughter single-handedly since his wife's passing. His work history shows dedication, not instability. He's taken any job necessary to provide for his child." Jack watched the judge's expression, searching for any sign of sympathy. His throat felt dry as sandpaper. "As for the alleged corporate scandal," Tom continued, "no charges have been filed, and there's no evidence linking Mr. Lawson to any wrongdoing. These are merely rumors being used to tarnish my client's character." The Thompsons' lawyer jumped up. "Your Honor, Mr. Lawson's association with Victoria Chase, CEO of Chase Enterprises, has put him at the center of a corporate espionage investigation. The media attention alone creates an unsuitable environment for a child." Jack closed his eyes briefly, Victoria's face flashing in his mind. The memory of their dance at the gala felt like it belonged to another lifetime. "Mr. Lawson," the judge addressed him directly, "would you like to speak on your own behalf?" Jack stood slowly, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Your Honor, I love my daughter more than anything in this world. Everything I've done has been for her. I may not be able to give her fancy schools or vacation homes, but I've given her stability, love, and values." His voice cracked slightly. "I taught her to be honest, to work hard, and to never give up. She's thriving in school, has friends in our community, and is surrounded by people who care about her." The Thompsons whispered to each other, their faces stern with disapproval. "I took the security job at Chase Enterprises because I wanted to provide better for Lily. Yes, I resigned, but only to protect her from the media circus. Every decision I've made has been with her best interests at heart." The judge studied him for a long moment. "This is a complex situation that requires careful consideration. I'm not comfortable making an immediate ruling without more evidence regarding Mr. Lawson's involvement, or lack thereof, in the Chase Enterprises situation." She shuffled her papers. "I'm ordering a 2-week continuance. During this time, I want a full investigation into these allegations and a detailed home study for both parties." The gavel's sharp crack echoed through the courtroom. Jack's shoulders slumped as people began filing out. Tom patted his arm sympathetically, but Jack barely felt it. Outside the courthouse, the bright Texas sun felt like a spotlight. Jack loosened his tie, feeling the weight of defeat pressing down on him. As he descended the stone steps, his eyes caught movement across the street. Victoria stood there, elegant even in her obvious distress. Their eyes met briefly. Tears streamed down her face as she watched him, her hand pressed against her mouth. She made no move to approach, and Jack understood why. Their worlds had become too dangerous to intersect. He turned away, unable to bear the sight of her pain matching his own. The sound of traffic and courthouse bustle faded into a dull roar as he walked to his truck, each step feeling heavier than the last. Behind him, Victoria remained rooted to her spot, her tears falling freely now as she watched the man she'd grown to care for walk away, knowing her silence might cost him everything he held dear. Victoria Chase stood in the Chase Enterprises boardroom, her hands steady on the polished mahogany table. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the faces of the 12 board members who sat in judgment before her. Their expressions ranged from disappointment to barely concealed anger. "Miss Chase," Richard Holbrook, the senior board member, spoke first. His silver hair caught the morning light as he leaned forward. "You cannot seriously be considering testifying for the janitor." He said the last word as if it tasted bitter in his mouth. Victoria lifted her chin, remembering Jack's quiet dignity, his gentle way with Lily, the strength in his hands when he'd saved her life that night in the parking garage. "His name is Jack Lawson," she said clearly. "And yes, I am testifying at his custody hearing tomorrow." Margaret Wheeler, who'd been on the board longer than Victoria had been alive, clicked her tongue. "Dear, you're not thinking clearly. This man is already implicated in corporate espionage. If you associate yourself with him now—" "He saved my life," Victoria cut in. The words rang through the silent room. "While all of you were home in your mansions, he was the one who stopped that attack. And now you want me to abandon him when he needs help keeping his daughter?" "The company's reputation," another board member began, "is worth nothing if we don't stand for what's right." Victoria's voice grew stronger. "I've spent 15 years building Chase Enterprises into what it is today. I've sacrificed everything, my time, my personal life, any chance at real happiness, all for this company's success." Richard's face darkened. "And now you'll throw it all away for a man who mops floors?" Victoria felt something snap inside her, not in anger, but in revelation. A lifetime of trying to please these people, of measuring herself against their impossible standards, crumbled away. She smiled, and several board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "Mr. Holbrook," she said quietly, "that man who mops floors has more integrity in his calloused hands than this entire room has in all its designer suits and luxury cars." "This is unacceptable," Margaret declared, standing up. "Victoria, if you proceed with this testimony, we will have no choice but to call an emergency vote of no confidence." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Victoria looked around the room, at the faces she'd known for years, people she'd once thought of as mentors and friends. Now she saw them clearly, prisoners of their own prejudices, afraid of anything that didn't fit their narrow view of worth. "Then vote," Victoria said simply. She reached up and unpinned her elegant blazer's golden Chase Enterprises pin, a symbol of executive leadership she'd worn every day for over a decade. She placed it gently on the table. "But I want you to understand something. Jack Lawson taught me that true courage isn't about protecting your reputation or your wealth. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it costs you everything." Richard's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "This is career suicide, Victoria. Think about what you're doing." Victoria thought of Jack's face when he'd resigned, the pain in his eyes as he tried to protect her reputation at the cost of his own happiness. She thought of Lily's bright smile, so much like her father's, and how that smile might fade if she were torn away from the only parent she had left. "I am thinking," she said. "For the first time in years, I'm thinking clearly." She gathered her papers into her leather portfolio. "Call your vote, but know this. I'd rather lose this company than lose my soul." The boardroom erupted in protests and threats, but Victoria was already walking toward the door. Her heels clicked against the marble floor with each step, a rhythm of liberation. She paused at the threshold, turning back one last time. "You know what the difference is between Jack and all of you?" she asked softly. "He never once asked me for anything, but he gave me everything. He showed me what real strength looks like, what real love looks like." She closed the door behind her, leaving the board in stunned silence. Her assistant Jennifer stood up as Victoria passed her desk, concern written across her young face. "Miss Chase, are you all right?" Victoria felt lighter than she had in years. "I'm perfect, Jennifer. Cancel my meetings for the rest of the day. I have somewhere important to be." The elevator ride down to the parking garage was peaceful. Victoria watched the floor numbers tick down, remembering how she'd once measured her success by how high she could climb. Now she understood. True height wasn't about floors in a building or numbers in a bank account. It was about how tall you could stand in your own conscience. In her car, she sat for a moment, hands on the steering wheel. The engine hummed quietly as she pulled up Jack's address on her phone. She'd never been to his apartment before. It had always been him coming to her world, trying to fit into spaces that weren't made for him. Now it was her turn to step into his world. Her heart began to pound as she drove through the city streets, leaving behind the gleaming skyscrapers for modest neighborhoods with small parks and corner stores. She rehearsed what she would say to him, about how sorry she was for letting the board influence her, about how she should have stood up for him sooner, about how he'd changed her life that night in the parking garage, and every day since. The words tumbled through her mind as she navigated the unfamiliar streets. Jack, I know I let you down, but I'm here now. No, that wasn't right. Jack, I finally understood what you've been trying to teach me all along. Better, but still not quite there. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel as she turned onto his street. The apartment building was small but well maintained, with window boxes full of flowers and children's bikes chained to the rack out front. It was nothing like her penthouse with its stark modern art and empty rooms, but somehow it felt more like home than anywhere she'd been in years. Victoria parked her car and checked her reflection in the rearview mirror. For once, she wasn't seeing the CEO of Chase Enterprises or the billionaire heiress the magazines loved to write about. She saw just Victoria, a woman who had finally found something worth fighting for. Her heart thundered against her ribs as she stepped out of the car. The walk to his building's front door felt like the longest journey of her life, each step carrying her further from the world she'd known and closer to the truth she'd been searching for all along. The evening shadows stretched long across Jack's small front yard as he sat at his kitchen table, papers scattered before him. Legal documents, custody forms, and bills, they all blurred together in a maze of worries. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, marking time in the quiet house. Lily was in her room, probably pretending to do homework while actually worrying about their future. A knock at the door startled him. It was gentle but firm, echoing through the modest home. Jack's heart skipped. No one visited this late. He pushed back his chair, the legs scraping against the worn linoleum floor, and made his way to the door. Through the peephole, a familiar figure stood on his porch, illuminated by the yellow porch light. His hand hesitated on the doorknob. Victoria Chase, the last person he expected to see, yet the one person he couldn't stop thinking about. Taking a deep breath, he opened the door. Victoria stood there, looking both determined and vulnerable. Gone was her usual corporate armor, the designer suits and perfect makeup. Instead, she wore simple jeans and a sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. Her eyes were red-rimmed but fierce with purpose. "Jack," she said softly, her voice carrying in the evening quiet. "Please, can I come in?" He stepped back automatically, his military training kicking in as he scanned the street behind her for paparazzi or curious onlookers. "You shouldn't be here, Victoria. The board. I don't care about the board anymore." She stepped inside, her perfume bringing memories of their dance at the gala flooding back. "I've spent my whole life caring about what other people think, about maintaining an image, about power and control. But none of it matters if I can't be true to myself." Jack closed the door, keeping his distance. The small entryway felt charged with tension. "Victoria, I resigned for a reason. I won't let my problems drag you down. Your company is just a company," she interrupted, taking a step closer. "But you and Lily, you showed me what really matters. Community, family, love." Her voice caught on the last word. "I sat in that boardroom today, listening to them tell me to stay away from you. And all I could think about was how empty my life was before I met you." Jack ran a hand through his hair, fighting the hope that threatened to rise in his chest. "It's not that simple. The custody hearing, I'm testifying." Victoria's words rang with certainty. "I don't care what the board threatens or what the media says. I'm going to tell the judge exactly who you are. The man who saved my life, who puts his daughter first, who shows up every day with dignity and honor no matter what life throws at him. Victoria." His voice was rough with emotion. "I can't ask you to risk everything. You didn't ask. I'm choosing this." She moved closer, close enough that he could see the tears threatening to spill from her eyes. "When that man attacked me in the garage, you didn't hesitate. You didn't calculate the risks or worry about consequences. You just acted because it was right. Now it's my turn to do what's right." Jack felt his carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble. "I've tried so hard to stay strong for Lily, to prove I can provide for her, protect her, but everything I do seems to make things worse." "That's not true." Victoria reached out, touching his arm. Your daughter adores you. I've seen how the veterans respect you, how the community supports you. You're not alone in this fight anymore, Jack." The simple touch broke something in him. Months of worry, fear, and loneliness crashed through his defenses. "I miss you," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Every day at work, I walk past your office. Every night, I remember our talks, our dance at the gala. But I convinced myself I had to stay away to protect you." Victoria's other hand came up to cup his face. "I miss you too, more than I thought possible. These past weeks without you, nothing feels right anymore. The office is just an office. The penthouse is just empty rooms. I kept thinking about that night at the Veterans Fundraiser, how real everything felt. How real you made me feel." Jack's hands found her waist, drawing her closer. "I never stopped thinking about you, not for a single day." Victoria's tears finally spilled over. "Then stop pushing me away. Let me help. Let me be part of your life, yours and Lily's. Whatever comes, we'll face it together." He pulled her into his arms then, holding her tightly as if she might disappear. She pressed her face into his shoulder, her arms wrapping around him just as fiercely. They stood like that in his modest entryway, the wall clock ticking steadily, the sound of distant traffic floating through the windows. "Daddy," Lily's voice came from the top of the stairs. They turned to see her standing there in her pajamas, hope written across her young face. "Miss Chase, are you staying?" Victoria wiped her eyes, keeping one arm around Jack's waist. "If that's okay with you, sweetheart." Lily's smile lit up the dim hallway. "More than okay." Jack held Victoria closer, feeling her warmth against him, the steady beat of her heart matching his own. For the first time in weeks, hope didn't feel like a dangerous thing to hold on to. It felt like coming home. Victoria's heels clicked against the polished floor of her private office as she paced, her heart racing with anticipation. Her lead investigator, Thompson, had just called with urgent news. The wall of windows behind her desk showed the twinkling lights of Dallas spreading out below, but her mind was focused on only one thing: proving Jack's innocence. The door opened, and Thompson strode in, clutching a thick manila folder. His usually stern face bore the hint of a smile. "Miss Chase, we've got it. All of it." Victoria's hands trembled slightly as she took the folder. "Tell me." The attacker, Marcus Reed, just confessed everything. Thompson pulled out several documents, spreading them across her desk. "He was hired by Apex Industries. We have the wire transfers, the encrypted emails, everything. They wanted to destabilize Chase Enterprises by making you look vulnerable." Victoria sank into her chair, relief washing over her as she examined the evidence. Bank statements showed a clear money trail from Apex to offshore accounts. Surveillance photos captured Reed meeting with Apex executives. Most damning of all was Reed's signed confession, detailing how he'd been hired to attack her that night in the parking garage. "And Jack?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Completely clean. There's not a single connection between him and any of this. He really was just in the right place at the right time. A true hero." Victoria pressed her hands to her face, fighting back tears of relief. She reached for her phone, her fingers hovering over Jack's number before pulling back. No, this news deserved to be delivered in person. Across town, Jack sat at his kitchen table, helping Lily with her math homework. The newspaper on the counter bore yesterday's harsh headline: "Questions remain about former janitor's role in Chase Enterprise attack." He'd stopped reading the papers weeks ago, but they still found ways to hurt him. A sudden commotion outside drew their attention. Car doors slammed, and voices grew louder. Jack moved to the window, his jaw tightening at the sight of reporters gathering on his lawn. But this time, something was different. Instead of their usual predatory excitement, they seemed almost apologetic. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. "Turn on Channel 7 now." Lily was already reaching for the remote. The TV flickered to life, showing a press conference outside the Chase Enterprises building. Victoria stood at a podium, her posture commanding and sure. Behind her, enlarged photos and documents were being displayed on screens. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victoria's voice rang clear and strong. "Today, we have conclusive evidence that completely exonerates Jack Lawson of any wrongdoing in the attack against me. Jack sank onto the couch, Lily's hand finding his as they watched. Victoria methodically laid out the evidence: the money trails, the confession, the conspiracy by Apex Industries. With each revelation, the weight of suspicion that had crushed Jack for weeks began to lift. Jack Lawson is not just innocent, Victoria continued, her voice growing passionate. He is a hero. When he saved my life that night, he wasn't part of any scheme. He was simply a good man doing what good men do, protecting others without thought for himself. Reporters clamored with questions, but Victoria held up her hand. Mr. Lawson has suffered greatly from these false accusations. His reputation has been damaged, his daughter's stability threatened, and his integrity questioned. Today, we set the record straight. The TV screen split to show various news anchors reacting to the breaking story. Headlines began scrolling across the bottom. Hero janitor cleared of all suspicion. Apex Industries behind Chase Enterprise attack. CEO stands by defender's innocence. Outside Jack's house, the reporters were now broadcasting live, their tone completely transformed. We're outside the home of Jack Lawson, the decorated veteran whose act of bravery saved Victoria Chase's life. Mr. Lawson has been completely cleared of any wrongdoing. Lily threw her arms around her father's neck. I knew it, Daddy. I knew you'd be okay. Jack hugged her tight, his eyes fixed on the TV screen where Victoria still stood at the podium. She was looking directly into the camera now, as if she could see right into his living room. To Jack Lawson and his daughter Lily, she said softly, I am so sorry for the pain these false accusations have caused. Your courage never wavered, even when faced with losing everything. That's the mark of a true hero. The doorbell rang, and Jack opened it to find Victoria standing there, still in her press conference outfit. The reporters parted respectfully, cameras clicking softly as she walked up his front path. I thought you might want to see these in person, she said, holding out the folder of evidence. Her eyes were bright with emotion. It's over, Jack. Really over. He took the folder with steady hands, but barely glanced at it before looking back at her. Thank you, he said simply, those two words carrying the weight of everything they'd been through. Behind them, the media captured it all. The CEO and the janitor, standing together on his modest porch while headlines scrolled across screens nationwide. Hero janitor proven innocent CEO stands by his side. Lily appeared beside them, her face glowing. Does this mean we can all be friends again? Victoria laughed, the sound full of joy and relief. I think it means even more than that, sweetheart. The three of them stood together in the doorway, smiling as cameras flashed, capturing the moment when truth finally triumphed over suspicion and love proved stronger than scandal. The marble halls of the Dallas County Courthouse echoed with footsteps as people filed into the courtroom. Jack Lawson tugged at his tie, a simple blue one Lily had picked out for him that morning. His hands were steady, but his heart thundered in his chest. The polished wooden benches creaked as spectators settled in. All rise, the bailiff called out. Judge Eleanor Martinez swept into the courtroom, her black robes rustling as she took her seat. Her face remained neutral as she surveyed the packed room. Be seated, she commanded, her voice firm but not unkind. Jack felt a gentle pressure on his arm and turned to find Victoria Chase beside him. She wore a modest navy suit, her usual CEO power attire replaced by something more appropriate for court. Her presence steadied him, like an anchor in rough seas. We're here to continue the custody hearing for Lily Lawson, Judge Martinez announced. I understand there are new developments to be presented? Jack's lawyer, Mr. Bennett, stood. Yes, Your Honor. We have additional testimony and evidence to present. In the front row, Lily sat between two social workers, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She wore her best dress, the yellow one with white flowers that reminded Jack so much of her mother. Her eyes never left him. The court calls Victoria Chase, Mr. Bennett announced. A murmur rippled through the courtroom as Victoria rose gracefully and made her way to the witness stand. Jack's in-laws, seated across the aisle, whispered furiously to their lawyer. After being sworn in, Victoria sat tall, her eyes clear and determined. I'm here today, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the hushed courtroom, to speak about a man of extraordinary character, Jack Lawson. She described that night in the parking garage, painting a vivid picture of Jack's courage and quick thinking. He didn't hesitate. He didn't know who I was. He simply saw someone in danger and acted. And since then? Mr. Bennett prompted. Since then, I've had the privilege of seeing who Jack Lawson truly is. Victoria's voice softened with emotion. I've watched him work double shifts to provide for his daughter. I've seen him help elderly veterans in his community without asking for recognition. But most importantly, I've witnessed his relationship with Lily. Victoria turned to look directly at the judge. Your Honor, I run a multi-billion-dollar corporation. I've met world leaders and captains of industry, but I've never met anyone who embodies integrity and devotion the way Jack Lawson does. The opposing lawyer stood for cross-examination. Miss Chase, isn't it true that Mr. Lawson was recently involved in a corporate scandal? That allegation has been completely disproven, Victoria replied firmly, producing a folder. I have here signed confessions and documented evidence showing that the attack on me was orchestrated by a rival company. Jack Lawson was never involved. In fact, he resigned from his position at my company to protect both me and his daughter from negative publicity, putting our well-being above his own interests. Judge Martinez accepted the documents, reviewing them carefully while the courtroom held its breath. Your Honor, Victoria continued, her voice thick with emotion. I've seen how Lily lights up when her father enters a room. I've watched him help her with homework after working 12-hour shifts. I've seen him skip meals to make sure she has everything she needs for school. That's not just being a parent. That's being an extraordinary one. Lily couldn't contain herself any longer. She burst from her seat and ran to her father, tears streaming down her face. Please, she cried out, wrapping her arms around Jack's waist. I want to stay with my daddy. He's all I have. The social workers moved to intercept her, but Judge Martinez held up her hand. Let her speak. Lily turned to face the judge, her small hands clutching Jack's. My dad works so hard for me. He makes me feel safe and loved every single day. Even when things are hard, he never lets me see him worry. He's teaching me to be brave and kind, just like him. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Please don't take me away from him. Judge Martinez removed her glasses, studying the scene before her. The courtroom was silent except for Lily's quiet sniffles as Jack held her close. I've reviewed all the evidence, the judge began. I've heard testimony from family members, teachers, social workers, and now one of the most prominent business leaders in our state. But most importantly, I've heard from Lily herself. She paused, looking directly at Jack. Mr. Lawson, while your financial situation may be modest, it's clear that you provide something far more valuable, a loving, stable home filled with dedication and sacrifice. She shuffled her papers decisively. It is the finding of this court that custody of Lily Lawson shall remain with her father, Jack Lawson. The courtroom erupted in cheers. Lily threw her arms around Jack's neck, and he lifted her up, holding her close as tears of relief rolled down his cheeks. Victoria beamed from the witness stand, her own eyes glistening. Daddy, Lily whispered against his neck. We're going to stay together forever? Forever and always, sweetheart, Jack promised, his voice rough with emotion. Forever and always. The judge's gavel cracked through the celebration. Order, she called, though she was smiling. Mr. Lawson, I expect you to continue being the excellent father you've proven yourself to be. Yes, Your Honor, Jack managed, still holding Lily tight. Thank you. Thank you so much. Around them, people were hugging and crying. Victoria had stepped down from the witness stand, watching the scene with joy written across her face. Jack's fellow veterans, who had packed the back rows of the courtroom, were clapping and whistling. Even some of the court staff were wiping away tears. Lily wouldn't let go of her father, and Jack had no intention of letting her go either. They stood in the middle of it all, father and daughter, their world finally secure. The nightmare was over. They were going home, together. The warm glow of sunset filtered through the windows of Jack's modest apartment, casting long shadows across the kitchen. The small dining table, usually set for two, now had 3 places, each with mismatched plates that somehow made everything feel more homey. The aroma of baked chicken and roasted vegetables filled the air, mixing with the sweet scent of fresh-baked rolls. Victoria Chase sat at the table, her designer blazer draped over the back of her chair, looking more relaxed than she had in months. Her long, dark hair was loose around her shoulders, and she'd rolled up the sleeves of her silk blouse. Gone was the stern CEO. In her place sat a woman who couldn't stop smiling. Pass the green beans, please, Lily asked, grinning at Victoria. Her blue eyes sparkled with joy, matching the happiness radiating from her father who sat across from her. Jack handed over the bowl, his weathered hands steady and sure. The lines of worry that had creased his face for weeks had softened. He watched as Victoria helped herself to more chicken, noting how natural she looked in their humble kitchen. "I still can't believe we won," Lily said between bites. "When the judge said I could stay with Dad," she paused, her fork halfway to her mouth. "I thought my heart was going to burst." "Mine too, sweetheart," Jack admitted, his voice gentle. He reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Mine too." Victoria set down her glass of water, her expression thoughtful. "You know what amazed me most today? The way the whole community showed up to support you both. I counted at least 30 people from the Veterans Fundraiser in that courtroom." "Small towns stick together," Jack said with a hint of pride. "Though I never expected." He shook his head, still processing the day's events. Lily sprinkled more pepper on her potatoes, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Remember Mrs. Henderson's face when she told the judge about how Dad fixed her roof last winter, for free? And didn't even tell anyone about it," Victoria added, giving Jack a knowing look. "Though I wasn't surprised. That's just who you are, Jack Lawson." A slight blush colored Jack's cheeks. He wasn't used to praise, especially not from someone like Victoria. "Just trying to be helpful," he mumbled. "Dad's terrible at taking compliments." Lily Stage whispered to Victoria, making both women laugh. The sound of their shared laughter seemed to break through something in Jack. His shoulders relaxed completely for the first time in weeks, and a genuine smile spread across his face. "You know what?" he said, pushing his plate back slightly. "I haven't felt this peaceful in a long time." Victoria reached over and touched his hand lightly. "Me neither. All those board meetings, the constant pressure, none of it matters compared to this. Just being here, with both of you. Even though our plates don't match?" Lily teased, holding up her blue ceramic plate next to Victoria's white one. "Especially because they don't match," Victoria replied firmly. "It's perfect exactly as it is." They lingered over dinner, sharing stories and small moments they'd missed during the weeks of separation. Jack told them about his first apartment after leaving the Army, making them laugh with tales of his disastrous attempts at cooking. Victoria opened up about her childhood, describing lonely dinners in massive dining rooms where children were seen but not heard. "I never thought I'd find this," Jack said quietly, after a comfortable lull in the conversation. His eyes met Victoria's, then moved to Lily. "After losing Sarah, I convinced myself that was it, that Lily and I would just figure it out on our own." "But you didn't have to," Victoria said softly. "No," he agreed, his voice thick with emotion. "We didn't." Lily yawned suddenly, trying to hide it behind her hand. The excitement of the day was finally catching up with her. She blinked slowly, fighting to keep her eyes open. "Someone's ready for bed," Jack observed with a gentle smile. "No, I'm not," Lily protested, even as she yawned again. She had moved her chair closer to Victoria's during dinner, and now she leaned slightly against the older woman's shoulder. "Can't we stay up a little longer?" Victoria wrapped an arm around Lily's shoulders, drawing her closer. The gesture was so natural, so maternal, it made Jack's heart ache in the best possible way. Lily's eyes fluttered closed as she nestled against Victoria's silk blouse. "Just 5 more minutes," Lily mumbled, already half asleep. Jack watched his daughter drift off, completely trusting and secure against Victoria's shoulder. The sight filled him with a profound sense of rightness. He caught Victoria's eye across the table and whispered, his voice barely audible. "She already thinks of you as family." Victoria's free hand covered her mouth, her eyes bright with unshed tears. She looked down at Lily's peaceful face, then back at Jack, unable to find words for the emotions overwhelming her. The kitchen grew quiet except for Lily's soft, steady breathing. The dishes sat forgotten on the table, the remnants of their meal, a testament to the simple joy of being together. Outside, the last rays of sunset painted the sky in shades of purple and gold, a perfect ending to a day that had changed everything. The morning sun glinted off the gleaming glass facade of Chase Enterprises headquarters. Victoria and Jack stood at the building's entrance, their hands clasped together. Her fingers trembled slightly, but Jack's steady grip gave her strength. She wore her signature power suit, while Jack was dressed in a crisp security uniform that highlighted his military bearing. "Ready?" Jack asked softly, his eyes warm with concern. Victoria took a deep breath, squeezing his hand. "With you? Always." They pushed through the revolving doors together. The lobby fell silent as employees stopped in their tracks, phones raised to capture the moment. Victoria's heels clicked purposefully across the marble floor, Jack matching her stride. Gone was any trace of the hesitation that had once marked his steps in this building. At the security desk, Officer Rodriguez's face broke into a wide grin. He snapped to attention and saluted Jack, who returned it with precision. Other security personnel followed suit, creating a ripple of respect through the lobby. "Welcome back, sir," Rodriguez called out. "We've missed your leadership." The elevator ride to the executive floor was filled with meaningful glances between them. Victoria's thumb traced small circles on Jack's hand, remembering all the late-night conversations they'd shared in this very building. How far they'd come from that terrifying night in the parking garage. The doors opened to reveal the board members waiting in the conference room, their faces a mix of concern and calculation. Victoria lifted her chin, every inch the CEO they'd always known, but with a new fire in her eyes. "Good morning," she announced, her voice carrying down the hallway. Employees began emerging from their offices, drawn by the commotion. "I believe we have some matters to discuss." Inside the conference room, the board chairman, Maxwell Peters, stood with a tight smile. "Victoria, perhaps we should speak privately." "No more private conversations," Victoria cut in. "No more whispered threats about image and propriety." She turned to address the growing crowd of employees gathering outside the glass walls. "Everything I have to say will be said in the open." Jack stood tall beside her, his presence both protective and proud. The morning light streaming through the windows caught the silver at his temples, highlighting the quiet dignity that had first drawn Victoria to him. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victoria projected her voice to reach everyone. "Many of you know Jack Lawson. Some of you know him as the janitor who saved my life. Others know him as the decorated veteran who served our country. Today, I'm proud to introduce him in his newest role, Head of Security for Chase Enterprises." A burst of applause erupted from the employees, led by the security team. Even some board members joined in, reading the room's energy. Jack's face remained composed, but his eyes shone with emotion. "But more than that," Victoria continued, her voice softening with genuine feeling. "He's the man who taught me that true worth isn't measured by bank accounts or social status. It's measured by character, by courage, and by how we treat others." The board chairman cleared his throat. "Victoria, while we appreciate the sentiment, there are protocols." "The protocols that allowed corporate espionage to threaten this company?" Victoria challenged. "The same protocols that almost let an innocent man take the blame? No, Maxwell. It's time for change." She gestured to the security team standing at attention near the door. "Jack has already reorganized our security protocols, identifying vulnerabilities our previous consultants missed. His military experience and leadership skills make him uniquely qualified for this position." A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. Several board members exchanged glances, their resistance visibly weakening as they witnessed the overwhelming support from the employees. "Furthermore," Victoria added, "our public relations team reports that social media response to Jack's vindication has been overwhelmingly positive. Our company's approval ratings have actually increased since the truth came out." The chairman's expression shifted from concern to careful consideration. Victoria recognized the look. He was calculating the benefits versus the risks, just as she knew he would. "Perhaps," Maxwell conceded, "we were hasty in our previous judgments." Victoria nodded graciously, but her grip on Jack's hand tightened. They'd won, but she wanted everyone to understand exactly what they were winning. "Jack," she said softly, "would you like to say a few words?" Jack stepped forward, his posture straight but his manner humble. The room fell silent, eager to hear from the man who had captured their CEO's heart and earned their respect. "Thank you," he began, his voice clear and steady. "When I first walked into this building as a janitor, I was just trying to provide for my daughter. I never expected to find a new purpose here. Or," he glanced at Victoria with a soft smile, "a new chance at love." The employees sighed appreciatively, while even the most stoic board members shifted in their seats. "In the military, we learned that honor isn't about rank or privilege. It's about doing what's right, even when it's hard. It's about standing up for others, even when it costs you something. He paused, looking around the room. Every person in this building, from the cleaning staff to the CEO, deserves to be treated with respect. Because true strength isn't about power over others. It's about lifting each other up. Victoria watched as his words landed, seeing heads nod in agreement. The security team stood straighter, pride evident in their bearing. Even the younger employees were leaning forward, caught up in Jack's quiet authority. I'm grateful for this opportunity, Jack continued, not just to protect this company and its people, but to show that faith in each other, resilience in the face of challenges, and staying true to our principles are what really matter. These are the values that build not just successful companies, but strong communities. The applause started slowly, then built to a thunderous level. Victoria saw tears in some eyes, determination in others. Jack had done more than win them over. He had inspired them. The board chairman stood, extending his hand to Jack. Welcome aboard, Mr. Lawson, officially this time. The Sunday morning sun painted golden streaks across the quiet streets of Millers Creek, Texas. Jack's old pickup truck rumbled down Main Street, passing familiar storefronts that hadn't changed in decades. Victoria sat in the passenger seat, her designer dress a stark contrast to the weathered leather interior. In the back, Lily bounced excitedly, pointing out landmarks from her father's stories. And that's where Dad used to get ice cream after baseball practice, Lily exclaimed, pressing her face against the window. Can we go there later? Jack chuckled, catching Victoria's eye. Some things never change. Old Joe still makes the best chocolate malts in 3 counties. Victoria smoothed her dress nervously. She'd traded her usual power suits for something simpler today, but she still felt overdressed. Are you sure they won't mind me being here? You're family now, Jack said softly, reaching over to squeeze her hand. This town knows how to welcome family. They pulled into the gravel parking lot of First Baptist Church, where white-clappered walls gleamed in the morning light. Several older couples were already making their way up the wooden steps, their Sunday best pressed and proper. A few heads turned as Jack helped Victoria from the truck, but the looks were warm and curious rather than judgmental. Jack Lawson, a robust woman in her 70s, hurried down the steps, arms outstretched. We've missed you at potluck, Mrs. Henderson. Jack grinned, accepting her fierce hug. You remember Lily? Growing like a weed, Mrs. Henderson beamed, pulling Lily close. Then she turned to Victoria, her kind eyes twinkling. And this must be the lady who's been taking such good care of our Jack. Victoria felt her cheeks warm. I'm Victoria Chase. It's lovely to meet you. Chase Enterprises Victoria Chase? Mrs. Henderson's eyebrows rose, but her smile never wavered. Well, honey, any woman who sees the gold in Jack's heart is welcome here. Come on in. We saved your family's usual pew. Inside, the church was a symphony of creaking wood and soft whispers. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, casting rainbow patterns across worn hymnals. Jack guided them to a pew near the middle, where an elderly man was already seated. Pastor Mike. Jack nodded respectfully. The pastor stood, his weathered face breaking into a wide smile. Welcome home, son. He turned to Victoria, extending a calloused hand. We've been praying for you both. The whole town followed your story. Victoria blinked back unexpected tears. Thank you. That means more than you know. As the congregation filled in around them, Victoria was struck by the genuine warmth in every greeting. Children waved at Lily. Elderly women patted Jack's shoulder, and not a single person treated Victoria like the billionaire CEO she was. Here, she was simply Jack's Victoria. The service began with familiar hymns, the piano slightly out of tune but played with heart. Victoria found herself swaying to the music, touched by the sincerity in every voice. Jack's deep baritone rumbled beside her, and Lily's clear soprano joined in confidently. This wasn't the polished performance of her usual cathedral. It was raw, real, and somehow more powerful. After the service, the congregation gathered in the church basement for coffee and donuts. The linoleum floors and fluorescent lights were a far cry from Victoria's usual Sunday brunches, but the laughter and conversation filling the room felt more genuine than any corporate gathering she'd ever attended. Miss Victoria, a teenage girl, approached shyly. Thank you for helping Mr. Jack keep Lily. We've been best friends since kindergarten. Before Victoria could respond, more townspeople gathered around, each with a story about Jack's kindness or Lily's achievements. They spoke of casseroles delivered during illnesses, driveways shoveled after storms, and countless small acts of generosity that Jack had never mentioned. Victoria felt something shift in her heart. Here was wealth that couldn't be measured in dollars, a richness of spirit that her corporate world had never shown her. She looked around the room, at the mismatched coffee mugs and hand-sewn quilts on the wall, at the children sharing cookies and the elders sharing wisdom. Standing suddenly, Victoria cleared her throat. The room quieted, all eyes turning to her. Jack started to rise, but she squeezed his shoulder gently. "I'd like to say something, if I may," she began, her voice soft but clear. "I came here today feeling nervous about fitting in. In my world, worth is measured by stock prices and profit margins. But you've shown me what real wealth looks like." She gestured to the room around them. "It's in the way you welcome strangers as family. It's in the love you've given Lily, the support you've shown Jack. It's in every casserole, every prayer, every kind word." Her voice wavered slightly. "I run a billion-dollar company, but you've taught me that the richest people I've ever met are right here in this church basement." Murmurs of appreciation rippled through the crowd. Mrs. Henderson dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Pastor Mike nodded approvingly. "Thank you," Victoria continued, "for showing me what community truly means, for teaching me that real wealth isn't in bank accounts. It's in the hearts of people who care for each other." As she sat down, Jack wrapped an arm around her shoulders. His eyes shone with pride and something deeper, a love built on shared understanding. Around them, the congregation resumed their conversations, but now Victoria was fully part of them. Women shared recipes, men discussed the Cowboys' chances this season, and children begged for one more donut. Later, as sunlight slanted through the basement windows, Jack led Victoria and Lily toward the door. They had promises to keep: ice cream at Old Joe's, a drive past Jack's childhood home, dinner with his high school football coach. But before they left, Jack paused in the doorway. He looked at Victoria, taking in how naturally she fit here among his people. Her expensive dress was spotted with coffee stains, her perfect hair slightly mussed from hugging children, and she had never looked more beautiful to him. Jack squeezed her hand tenderly. "This is where I belong," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "And now, so do you." The Texas evening painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink as Jack, Victoria, and Lily settled onto the worn wooden porch swing of their modest home. The old chains creaked softly with each gentle sway, a familiar sound that had become comfort to all three of them. Victoria had kicked off her expensive heels, letting her bare feet brush against the weathered boards beneath them. Lily sat cross-legged on the porch railing, her homework forgotten beside her as she watched the colors change in the sky. The evening air was warm and sweet, with the scent of blooming jasmine that crawled up the porch trellis, a plant Jack's late wife had lovingly tended years ago. "The sunset's prettier here than from my penthouse," Victoria mused, leaning slightly against Jack's shoulder. "I never thought I'd say this, but I don't miss those million-dollar views anymore." Jack smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Something about watching it from ground level makes it feel more real, doesn't it?" Lily nodded enthusiastically. "Plus, we can hear the crickets here, and sometimes owls." As if on cue, a chorus of crickets began their evening symphony from the nearby flower beds. Victoria closed her eyes, drinking in the peaceful moment. Her perfectly manicured hands, once only familiar with signing contracts and directing board meetings, now rested comfortably on the worn fabric of her casual sundress. The transformation in her life over the past months still amazed her. Jack watched her profile in the fading light, his heart full to bursting. This powerful woman who had stepped down from her corporate throne to stand beside him in court, who read bedtime stories to Lily, who laughed at his terrible jokes. She had changed everything. "You know," he said softly, his voice rough with emotion, "I never thought I'd find this again." Victoria opened her eyes, turning to meet his gaze. "Find what?" "This feeling." Jack shifted slightly, facing her more directly. "After Sarah died, I thought that part of my life was over. I focused everything on being there for Lily, on just getting through each day." Lily watched them intently, her young face wise beyond her years. She held her breath, sensing the importance of the moment. "But then you crashed into my life," Jack continued, a slight smile playing at his lips. "Or rather, I crashed into yours that night in the parking garage." Victoria's eyes glistened in the dying light. "You saved my life that night. Maybe." Jack reached for her hand, his calloused fingers intertwining with her smooth ones. "But you've been saving mine ever since." Victoria won. He paused, gathering his courage. "I love you. Not because you're Victoria Chase, CEO, or because you helped us keep our family together. I love you because you're the woman who brings me coffee during night shifts, who laughs at Lily's science jokes, who sees me, really sees me, not as the janitor or the security chief, but just as me." Lily clasped her hands together, barely containing her excitement as she watched Victoria's eyes fill with tears. "Jack," Victoria's voice trembled slightly, "that night you saved me. I thought I was just meeting my hero. I had no idea I was meeting the love of my life." She squeezed his hand tightly. "I've fallen more in love with you every day since then. With your quiet strength, your unwavering integrity, the way you love Lily with your whole heart. I love you, Jack Lawson. I love our small-town life, our little family, all of it." Jack cupped her face gently with his free hand, his thumb brushing away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. Slowly, he leaned forward and kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. Lily couldn't contain herself any longer. She burst into delighted applause, startling them apart. "Finally!" she exclaimed, bouncing on her perch. "I've been waiting forever for you two to say it." Jack and Victoria laughed, their faces flushed with happiness and mild embarrassment. Lily hopped down from her railing and squeezed between them on the swing, wrapping an arm around each of them. Above them, the first stars began to twinkle in the deepening twilight. Victoria rested her head against Jack's shoulder, her arm still around Lily. "You saved me once, Jack," she whispered. "But really, you've saved me every day since." The three of them sat there, wrapped in a tight embrace, their hearts beating in harmony under the emerging stars. The cricket chorus swelled around them, nature's own celebration of their newly declared love, their hard-won happiness, their precious family bond. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Jack Lawson, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.